minutes after I said, hey.
Hello.
We're here.
29th.
It's not exactly when I said it was going to be, but it's within 4.5 minutes of when I said we would start.
That's an on-time.
That's on time for me. It's within 15 minutes, right?
No,
Exactly.
5 minutes
Yeah, it's not bad.
of pushing and 15 minutes of arrival.
That's just our own Acme
No,
metric. That's not an
DOT.
FAA. Is it DOT?
DOT.
Oh.
DOT.
Well, how about that?
Oh, there you go.
There
we
you
just
go.
increase our accuracy by 50%.
So we're up to
Wow, we're 100% now?
No.
50% on top of the 50% is only
75%?
75%.
Well, I think that's about as high as it's ever been.
I
really
think so.
is.
We're really looking for the moon
Really
here.
awesome.
Yeah, shooting for the moon there. Okay, so hello, everyone, and glad to see you all. Let's see, how many do we have here in the chat? We have participants. Not a whole lot. We have Chris Cheatwood, First Officer Mike, Graham Haley, me, Jennifer, Liz Piper, Michael Kuipers, Neville Bounds, Stephanie Plummer, and Tanya. Hey Tanya.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Yes, hello everyone. Okay, go back to the chat. Okay, so how are the levels, everybody? Hopefully we're not having the issue that we had last week. Because do we sound...
sound good to me.
Oh, shoot, I did it again.
You got to keep it in, Jeff.
That's
Dana's been on a roll, just so
No, we're talking about the...
Oh, just
what's
about
that
the
cable?
mic?
That's what she said.
What's this cable?
XLR.
XLR. He's got to keep the XLR in. He keeps on popping it out.
Well, I just keep bumping it. I don't know. It's something weird. There's a bad connection or whatever. Okay.
And it's saying the audio and video is good.
Excellent. It's just like I was mixing it. Wow. Now that's something else.
Well, who said that?
Nev said that.
Oh my God.
I know. That's really good. Thank you, sir.
The only one without glasses.
2 beds, no doubles left, I guess.
Know what?
2 beds, twin beds, question mark. No doubles left, I guess.
Well, I was hoping for the king size. And then
I'm not, different rooms.
WAPG.
These are the only glasses I have nearby.
Oh, nice.
Dana will appreciate
You look very attractive with those.
I'm sure I do.
Oh, you know what I need to do? I need
No.
to pee.
Oh, look.
I have some too, but they're in a bag over there. So
Actually, I do have another pair of glasses here. These are even better. Hold on.
oh, ugh. Put them back on, Steph. Ugh.
Do something. David Saul, please.
How about these?
Perfect.
Those are your real
very
glasses, I think.
Yeah.
Now
aren't
we
they?
just give you
These
a helmet
are
and throw you in the
lead
back of my
glasses.
motorcycle. It's perfect.
These are lead glasses. They're actually very heavy.
Oh,
So is that so you can see through everybody's clothes or what?
they're not X-ray
Lead
glasses.
usually does the opposite. It prevents the X-rays
that's
from
right.
getting
You're
to my
right.
eyeballs.
Protects her from kryptonite, of course,
That's
Dana.
right.
Oh, I love all the pissing jokes, everybody. Delta P.
Delta
I'm a
P.
pisser. Yeah, I am. Okay, I'll be right back. And then we'll get this thing going.
Okay.
All right. Leave it to my hand. Oh, let me touch this. There. Let me touch this right. Yeah, let me grab that.
No.
I'm such a mess. I just cleaned my desk and now it's a complete mess again.
Well, I gotta look. If I'm gonna be a captain, I have to look like a captain after all.
Yes, exactly.
When are you going to start doing that?
Looking like a captain or being a captain?
No, right now it looks like
Looking
a
like a captain.
ass.
You can put your hat on the right way around. That helps.
Does that work better?
Oh, no. Almost got it.
There we go.
I used to love wearing my uniform hat backwards and claiming I was a submarine captain.
No, we say we're en France. Parlez-vous français? Parlez-vous? Oui, oui.
Je parle un petit peu
You
de
put them on
français.
back. It looks like you're flying for France.
Well, don't they have peaks on their caps?
I don't know. I don't see Air France very often.
So I'm just trying to work out who invented that joke because I'm going, really? Now, the only airline that I could con like that would be Alitalia, because they all the captains walk around with their big coats just thrown over their shoulders. They don't put their arms through them; they just wear them over their shoulders.
Wow.
And it's
Really?
very suave.
So, hat forward or hat back?
Well, back makes you look like a 12-year-old.
Paisan? A paisan?
12-year-old.
Well, all that much better. Now all the 18-year-old girls think I'm hot.
I like forward. Just my opinion. Yeah.
There you go. You like that better, huh?
I do.
Okay. I'm incognito today because I'm in the same room with him. Pretty scary.
Is that why the sunglasses on?
Yeah, sunglasses in paradise. I guess I'm in paradise. And he actually did just wash his hands. That's always a good
reassuring.
Yeah, thank God. Of course, I barely made it out of the flight deck getting in here to Omaha before I had to go drain. And here I am in the laboratory.
He knocked over 3 first-class passengers.
He's like, move it.
All 14 of them.
We set the brakes, and before we even did the shutdown checklist, he was out of the cockpit. Seriously, I'm not exaggerating.
No. And then next thing I know, our corporation requires all employees to wash their hands before returning to work. I'm like,
that's one of my favorite PAs when first officer's in the bathroom. Just a reminder that all employees are required to wash their hands after using the restroom facility.
Do you really? Oh my God.
I love that.
You jerk.
You're welcome.
I'll get you back. Don't you worry.
Okay.
I'll get a whole nother day to do it.
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, and I know just the one.
Oh, come on. Come on.
Oh, yes. Oh, I've got it. I got it covered.
All right. Well, I'm not going to recommend you for a promotion then.
Okay, fine. I'll be happy.
Okay,
to
let me play something just to make sure that this is getting recorded. Make back over here.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy.
Okay, looks like it's recording. Very good. You guys still there?
Yes.
Good.
Nope, I'm still here.
Yeah, I can see that.
I can smell it. That you're here.
Wow.
So much love.
Yeah.
Oh.
Don't touch me. Nope. Hey. Ooh. Wow. I haven't been touched like that in quite some time.
Ladies and
I haven't been touched at all.
Zero
in quite
control
some...
over this show today. Just so you know.
I like gladiator movies.
You like gladiator movies.
Ah, you're making me blush.
Joey.
You like
movies about
gladiator?
gladiators.
You like hanging out at Turkish prisons?
Turkish.
Liz already said it's going to be one of those shows. Yeah. It will be,
No,
Liz.
it's not. No, it's not, Liz. Steph will keep them under control. Don't
Nope.
you?
I
I
doubt it. I really doubt it.
They're
How
beyond.
do I get
The two of them in the same room. There's not much I can do.
No,
That's
there's
true.
not.
Jeff's looking a
Sorry.
bit jaundiced. Do you think he's supposed to look yellow?
No, I know I don't like the color balance either.
Oh, you could turn those lights off back there and probably help out.
I'm not sure that has anything to do with the color balance.
No, you're just
Okay, now
jaundiced.
I'm having a problem here
You're racist.
getting. Okay, I have to do something. I can't get to the record button on the window because I've changed the display resolution. So now it's like below the dock, and I can't get it. Again, that's going to be a problem if I can't actually get it to record.
Isn't there a key press you can do instead?
There might be. There's probably a shortcut for that. Edit. Keyboard shortcuts. Here we go. And do you see one there that says record?
You've lost the record button.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like below it's in the window I know. I'll just go ahead and I know what to do. I'll go here and just
Minimize
change
everything.
the display settings, the display resolution.
I can see that
And-
those glasses are doing their job, Dana. They have to. You can't look through them when you're trying to read something.
You know, I should
Well, his
probably
brightness is turned down too low, so I
go to the
can't see
bathroom real
my
quick, too,
glasses.
before we
Or,
start.
for that matter, these glasses make it real dim, wit, and
You dimwit.
dim wit. I had to
Okay.
look cool. I mean, it's our last show, probably on the road together.
There we go.
Look, good luck with that.
no,
When are you
well,
going to
I
get
don't-
changed?
He means when are you going to become a captain? I think that's what he
No,
means.
no, no. When are you going to get? When are you going to get changed so you look cool?
Oh, chains.
Changed.
Oh, changed.
When are you
Changed.
going to
It's that
change your
damn
clothes?
British
Oh,
accent.
God.
I'm going to change my clothes.
No, I'm speaking English. You guys are just making a mess of it.
Sorry.
Sorry. As Bostonians
uh,
talk as close
sorry.
to Queen's English as you're going to get in the States.
Yeah, I don't think the Queen would necessarily agree.
Well, I'm the only cool one here. I'm wearing a Masters shirt that I bought at the Masters.
What? You bought a golfing shirt at the Masters?
I went to the Masters several times.
Masters. Try
Golf
Masters.
Have you found the
Yes.
record button yet?
Masters.
I'm just enjoying this wonderful conversation.
It's Masters.
Yeah, I need to find
Masters.
it. I need to go back to the display setting that I had before and default. And let's see. Can I see it? May I see it?
I have no idea what he's looking for.
No.
Oh, come on. Really? Damn. Excuse me. Darn.
Mashugana.
And there were going to be no technical hitches this time.
No, none.
None whatsoever.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. I just want to. Now, every time I put my cursor down to the bottom to get the bottom of the window, the dock pops up. Stop it!
Can you move the dock to the left?
Okay, hang on. Almost there. I'm almost there. Okay. Now. Son of a gun, it keeps popping down below. I don't like it. Okay, I'm going to hit the record button. Boom. Okay, are we ready to do 3, 2, 1 and all that?
Let me
Yes.
get my clapper.
Did you bring it? Oh, I don't have it either. Okay. We're going to go. Ready. 3, 2, 1. You didn't have to clap.
No, I didn't.
Dana, you missed your opportunity to wait like a beat and then clap.
Yeah, really. That would have been funny.
Yep, that would have been very funny.
Okay, let me see if I can adjust the color temperature. Still, yeah, I still look jaundiced. I got it almost all the way to the left. Here, see if this is any better.
It's the white. It's the white balance you really want to have.
I know.
have
That's
a
what
go
I'm.
at.
That's what I mean. White balance, the temperature. I have it in auto right now. That's auto, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And now I've just put it in manual, and I have it
Oh my
all the way to the left for blue. That's it. That's the best I can do.
Oh, okay.
Unless
Well,
I can
that's-
get. Maybe I can get this thing here. Hello, 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 hello. Did that recalibrate at all?
No.
You need
No.
an 18% gray card.
Well, okay. Let me dig that out of my bag. I'm not a photo. I mean, I used to carry those around when I had my photography stuff.
Yeah.
See, I don't know why it's just.
Is it the same one you sent to me? Oh my God, it's gone all red now.
I'm using webcam settings,
Ah.
and I don't know why I can't get the balance right. But
Have you
That's
heard of this program called Eyeglasses? Works very well.
Well, it tends to. Yeah, I do. By the way, I'm the one that told you about it.
Yeah, I know.
But
It's fun.
it makes the CPU run like crazy, and I'm running several programs simultaneously, and then the fan goes, and it makes it a very difficult thing to edit all that out.
Oh, interesting. Actually,
So
you're
I
right.
have to-
My
I have
CPU is
to-
going at 42%, which is quite a lot for this machine.
Yep, see what I mean?
Let's
And you
shut
probably don't
down some
have
stuff.
half the things that I'm running right now. Okay,
No.
so I'd rather not. I'd rather just deal with webcam settings and not have to deal with the noise reduction.
What about the brightness?
The what?
Turn up the brightness a little bit.
I don't think that will help, but I'll try it.
Oh, Neville says, unplug it back in, it'll recalibrate.
Okay. Oh boy, here we go.
Bye. Thanks for
Lights
coming.
out.
Yeah.
So long, and thanks
We're not
for
gonna
all the
have tech
fish.
problems.
Well, that looks good now. You look perfect, Jeff.
Yeah, I know.
Yep, that
Colors
little bloke,
perfect.
that little bloke
Yeah.
with the moustache, and what's
Yeah,
more,
don't
you've
have
lost
to look at me
Dana.
anymore. Yep, don't have to look at me anymore. Perfect. Everybody's yay.
No, well, now you're in the wrong camera. We're looking up your noses.
Yeah, that worked very well.
Oh, now you're in a brothel.
Exactly.
Oh.
That looks very
I
good.
think
We
I'll be
like
moving.
that. This is
was a
Airline
good
Pilot
fix,
Guy
Neville.
After Dark.
Thanks for that suggestion, Nev.
Oh, dear. Yes, Nev says that went well.
Good suggestion, Nev. Good suggestion.
Excellent.
We can always count on Nev to help.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
The camera
What's
I'm using,
the
Pip, is a
hell?
little Logitech a 1020p camera that Jeff kindly threw my way when we met up once, and it produces a very clean picture. It's lovely.
Yeah, if you have the lighting is all nice. Okay. I'm bringing up the exposure time. Things should
Well-
be improving.
It is, yes.
Hello, hello.
Still there.
But it's still yellow.
Still yellow. Now you just look like you
Yeah.
came out of The Simpsons. Oh, that's
Mellow
That's
fine.
okay.
yellow.
That's
So-
a good title
No,
for
it's
the
not
show.
okay. It's not.
It's
Just
Yellow
hold,
submarine.
make sure you only hold up 3 fingers, and you can pretend you're
it's
in the
not an
Simpsons.
audio podcast show.
It is. But
So who in the
Right,
world
yeah, that's
cares
good.
what we
Don't
listen
touch it. That's fine. That's absolutely perfect in England.
okay. I care because there are a considerable amount of people that watch the video.
And Jeff's a captains, and captains care.
We do. Attention to detail.
There you go.
Okay. Here we go. Now, I have to make sure I have my finger on the right trackpad. And we go over here to that.
Good luck.
And to that.
Make sure you have your finger in the right place.
I always try.
It looks like you have it.
Shall we?
We shall.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 317.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio Shoot. The hell?
1707.
Thank you. No, 7107.
7107.
Not that it really matters.
Yeah, he's up
Okay,
in the sky.
got the band.
It's the airline
You could have just said any number.
That's
true.
We don't really know.
No one really cares.
No one cares.
But it was just enough to throw me off.
Yep.
Thinking, oh yeah, idiot. You didn't fix that. Because I'm just a news reader, just blindly reading.
Which studio is Dana going to be in?
The same one I'm in.
Boy,
Uh,
this is gonna be a rough show.
No, they're good when they start off like this.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yes. Ooh, what you drinking, Nick?
I nearly made the trick of turning the can on its side. State of Mind Session IPA
Very nice.
from CA.
California.
Could be.
What's the name?
It's got lots of pretty pictures on it.
What's the brewery?
Now you're asking. It's written up the can.
God bless
America, land that I love. You're right, Pip. Room number's wrong. It ruins. Oh, good. Dana's getting up, so I'm going to go ahead and start.
I don't think it was brewed.
Hold it up to the camera and talk for a minute, and I'll see. I can probably read it there.
Hello, hello, hello.
Oh,
What do
you
you
gotta
think?
put the right part of the.
What do you reckon?
Can you
Never
wipe it
mind.
out? Can you white
Never
box it on from your screen?
Yeah, I
Stuff?
can probably do that. I can do that. All right, hold it up one more time.
Okay.
Back up just a little. Okay. Music, band. Oh, okay. Wait.
Session IPA, you see.
Quebec.
Like this.
Hold on. Back up just a little bit.
Canada.
No.
Got CA's.
Yeah,
Probably
CA is
starts
for Canada.
Canadian. Oh, I wonder who gave me this. Because I don't
that's
think
one
I
of those
bought
from
it.
Dr. John Brown.
John Brown's body lies a rolling in his grave.
He probably
He's
is right
still
now.
very much alive. That particular one.
Okay.
Thanks,
We're going
John.
to try this again.
Cheers. Here's to
Cheers.
you, mate.
Cheers, teammate.
That's all right. Just taste of
He loves it.
bananas or something.
Cheers. Fruity.
Yeah, it's fruity. Very fruity,
We know
John.
how Nick likes those fruity beers.
Yeah. Yes, I have girls' beers.
She likes those fruit cakes too.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 317.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 7107 in the Hilton Recording Studios in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Put your ride and it's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, the latest aviation news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, 100 years. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 317 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy show. I'm Captain Jeff, a captain for a U.S. legacy carrier. And joining me today from her beautiful lakeside cottage in South Carolina, Doctor, marathon runner, a IPA connoisseur, strength training junkie, commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot, Dr. Stephanie Plummer.
Hello. It's a lovely Thursday afternoon here in South Carolina. Definitely a beautiful day. Probably should be outside, but I love you guys, so here I am. I've opened up all the windows, so if you hear the birds in the background and some wind, that's just part of the ambiance today. So.
We love you too. And
Speak for yourself.
oops, also joining us, I'll fix that in post, from his sprawling country estate in the southwest of London, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick Anderson.
Hi there, Jeff. Hello, Steph. And there's Jeff. I had to tell you, there's some bloke sitting beside you.
I wasn't going to mention it, Nick. I figured maybe he did.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Yes, I am indeed near London in my little 2 up, 2 down, and great to be back on the show again.
Awesome. And last, but certainly not least, sitting right here beside me in our hotel studio, barbecue master, bourbon connoisseur, motorcycle riding pilot for a major U.S. legacy carrier, soon to be Captain Dana Colton.
Well, hello there, APG community. Jeff and I are indeed sitting next to each other. We've been...
Yeah, get your hand off my leg.
Well, you know what? We have been doing coupled approaches these last 2 days. You know, if you know what a coupled approach is...
It's not a couple's approach. It's a coupled approach.
Is that like a couple's massage?
We both have our hands on the throttle holding hands. So it's just so romantic. But no, great to be here with flying with Captain Jeff, which is... I was commenting that it's pretty amazing because I think a lot of the people in the community would love to be sitting here with Captain Jeff flying with him. So it's truly an honor to be here with the podcast and also sitting here right next to him looking at him with my sunglasses on because I look like a captain there.
I told you before we started recording there were certain things that we weren't going to talk about. And you've already blown that.
No.
Oh.
HR making...
We haven't talked about all the things yet.
Anyway, yes, we're together. This is one of the last trips that you have as a first officer.
That's correct.
Well, you have like 3 or 4 more to go next month.
4 more.
Okay. And so Dana saw this trip in the pot of open trips and he jumped all over it. And so I'm so glad he did because we're just having a blast. And we'll talk about that probably a little bit later.
We will.
Anyway, so let's start with Dr. Steph. What has been going on with you? What are you up to?
When did we talk last? It was sometime last week, wasn't it? Like
it was like
a week ago.
I don't
Wednesday,
know.
Thursday. I don't know. It wasn't over the weekend, definitely. So I can tell you what I did over the weekend.
Yeah.
So last week on Friday, I woke up in the morning and I decided. I think I've talked a little bit about how my foot has been bothering me a little bit with some of my running, and I broke my finger and all that good stuff. But back to feeling 100% or pretty close to, and decided to join my friend that I do all my marathon running with, one of my former med school roommates up in Boston, to run the first 21 miles of the Boston Marathon course last Saturday. So did that just kind of spur of the moment, went up there, had a really great 22 hours in Boston and beautiful day for running. It was a really nice long training run.
Hang on a minute, Steph, that's not even a mile an hour.
Well, I mean,
22 hours to do 20 miles. Come on.
I ran go back up. I was in Boston for 22 hours.
Yeah.
During that time, I navigated public transportation out to Hopkinton because that's where the Boston Marathon course starts. So it's not actually in Boston.
Hopkinton.
No, I can't. My Boston accent is broken permanently. Okay. So, sorry. You'll just have to imagine. Or I'll get Dana. I'll just stop and Dana can introduce. Thank you. I went there. Got in about, 11 o'clock at night and slept for a few hours. Woke up at about 7 o'clock in the morning and joined my friend, and we went out to the course, and there were probably 3,000 people out there that day running the course. Bigger than some marathons I've actually participated in. And it was just a training run. Nice day, 40 degrees, some mostly cloudy, a little bit of snow showers later in the day, but not anything terrible. Nice weather for running. So, and the run felt great.
Up on Heartbreak Hill.
I finished at the very top of Heartbreak Hill. That's 21 miles.
Heartbreak Hill.
Heartbreak Hill. Heartbreak Hill.
And there's your heart.
There's an R in that word.
Heartbreak.
There's an R in that word.
Yeah, I'm saying the R. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, moving on.
Yes, please.
Just enough time to collect all my stuff again, get a shower, go back into the city. Had a really nice Italian carb loading meal I forget what the name of the restaurant was, in the North End, and then went back to the airport and came home. So little whirlwind trip, but it was a lot of fun.
Brilliant.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Okay. Nick.
Heartbreak. Sorry.
Me, sir. Me. Is it me? My turn.
Yes.
Let me think. When did we do the show?
We did actually. It was Wednesday a week ago. Wait a minute.
Right. Yeah, it was.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that can't remember these things.
What day is today? It was like a little over a week ago. A week
Today
ago
is
yesterday.
Yeah. So I had a simulator to go for, which I think I mentioned. It was a really horrible time. Like we were going to be in the box at 11 o'clock at night, wouldn't going to get out till 3 a.m. Anyway, I girded my loins, studded away, got into my car, drove to the simulator building, and I'm sitting there looking at my watch going, well, I'm here. Where's my first officer? Now, usually the trainers are they arrive smack on time because they've got no preparation. They don't have to worry about being late. If they're late, they can usually make it up. But if one of the subjects is late, oh my God, you'll be marked down. And so I sat there, no FO, and then my instructor pitched up and he said, "Oh, hi Nick, well, where's your first officer?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." So he picked up his little
Did
phone.
you know it was your responsibility to bring your own first officer?
Bring your first officer. Well, if I could have found one. Actually, somebody said, "Hey, there's bound to be a bunch of 500-hour easy jet first officers kicking around. Just grab one of those." But no, I hunted around and couldn't find him. We looked under the doors and phoned the company, and he was on the schedule for the simulator, but they hadn't put it on his roster. So, I mean, we don't normally look at the piece of paper of the simulator unless you've got one rostered to find out who you're with. So he had no, and he was at home. Oh, actually, he's fast asleep, I think. So
I didn't bother telling him.
No. So nice. I turned around and drove home again, and which meant I got a reasonable night's sleep, which was kind of nice because then we had a good weekend. I've had my car fixed because I had remember that light that came on when I was trying to get to the talk at St. Benedict's. Mm-hmm. Big shout out for them, of course. St. Benedict's School Aviation Group. I'll be there next month. I eventually got that fixed. Cost me £375. Ouch. And then I went up to London on the train to meet with Sir Glenn Torpey, ex-Chief of the Air Staff of the Royal Air Force. And what a lovely guy. We're old friends, I know, but I hadn't seen him for years. And he was very kind, organized lunch for us. And I sat down with him and interviewed him for a good hour and a half. We're getting a little bit of him just at the end of today's plain tale, but I'm doing it'll probably break down to about three proper plain tales about him and his exploits as a scud hunter in the first Gulf War. Absolutely brilliant stuff. I can't wait to get it all together and make a story out of that.
I can't wait to hear the first episode or installment of that today.
Today's something
that's
different.
Right. It's a different one. Never mind.
Yeah, I asked him to put his Chief of the Air Staff hat on and just comment on the subject of today.
Okay. Gotcha.
But I'm going to do 3 proper with him telling about his time mainly on the Tornado to come.
Most excellent. Most excellent. Look forward to that. Okay, well, since the last episode, Wednesday, that was had just come home from a 3-day trip. And then the next morning, I think I mentioned it on the last show that I was heading out to California for personal things, legal issues going on. I'm the trustee of the trust that my mom and my stepfather created many, many years ago. And just, well, I'm not going to say that much about it, except that it's not a lot of fun and things have been challenged. And now we're involved in a legal process in courts and that kind of thing. And it's just turns my stomach just to think about it. But so when I was out there, went to a hearing and I thought I would be able to, get back on an airplane, fly back out and be home for the weekend. And thank you. Dan is offering me his whatever's left of his bourbon on the rocks. But that's okay. But then at the last minute there at the hearing, they said, yeah, you need to sell the house and do all that. And I'm thinking, I don't have a lot of time. So I had to find a real estate agent and do all the necessary paperwork and everything else to get the house listed for sale and everything else. So I was very, very busy and very, very happy to finally head home on Sunday. Jump seated on a Airbus A321, and then I was kind of short for the month as far as time because I had to drop a trip to make it out to California. So I ended up picking up a 2-day, and I really feel bad. I'd like to apologize. I normally am pretty good about getting these shows edited and posted within 2-3 days or so of our recording date. And we recorded on a Wednesday, and it was Thursday and Friday and Saturday. And I kept thinking, well, I should have time to do it while I'm out in California, or maybe like on the airplane on the way out. But I had to ride the jump seat on the way out too, and I couldn't pull the laptop out in the cockpit. That wouldn't be cool or legal for my company. So I thought, well, I'll just wait until I'm in a hotel room or at the whatever. And I never got around to it. Just didn't have time. And so finally got the thing edited and published Monday night. So I do apologize for it taking so long this last time. I promise I'll try to get it out there a little bit more quickly in the future. So I did an overnight, got back home on Tuesday afternoon, and then took all the dirty stuff out of the suitcase and then put in clean stuff and repacked everything and headed out yesterday morning for this trip, which I was really looking forward to because I knew that Dana and I were going to be flying together. And it's a pretty good trip. It's, one leg down to Panama City. We were thinking Panama City Beach, and then a nice long layover down there on the beach. Then 2 legs to Omaha today, and then 3 legs tomorrow. However, Dana and I were in the van, having been picked up from the Emerald Coast Panama City Airport, and the van driver exiting the airport started turning left, and I immediately sensed something was terribly wrong. Yeah,
the beach is the other direction.
Yeah, the beach hotel goes to the right, and we were heading to the left, and we're going, where are you oh no. And I looked at my schedule on my phone, and I noticed, oh, Dana, you're not going to believe this. We're not at the beach. I asked the driver, I said, are we going to the beach? He goes, oh no, we're going to the non-beach location. I went, oh. Anyway, it worked out. We still were able to get a ride from the hotel staff to a restaurant closer to the beach for a wonderful seafood dinner last night. So, and we had them pick us back up. So it worked out. Could have been better, but no ocean breeze for us, right?
Yeah, but I saw plenty of sand.
Yeah, lots of sand
at the construction site around the corner.
Yeah. Well, there's that. It wasn't perfect, but it was still a nice long layover, and it was a nice easy day. You have to admit that it was like a 39-minute flight from Atlanta to Panama City, and that was it. That's all we had to do yesterday.
Slave driver made me do everything too.
Yeah, no, he asked me if he could do everything, and I said, well, sure, if you twist my arm. But we had a good time regardless. And let's see, what else was I going to say about that? Anything? Go ahead.
I was going to say they put us at a hotel that was really close to West Marine, which forced me to go ahead and have to go buy a little treat for the new APG-B, the airline pilot guy boat. So
the B. Okay.
Yeah. Which a future meetup.
HMS APG.
Yep.
USS APG.
USS.
Yeah.
So
your boat can be the HMS something or other, but
I'll let you finish because I have a few things to say.
Okay.
I'll let you finish.
All right. So let's see. What was I going to say? So I mentioned that I jump seated on the Airbus 321 from LA to Atlanta. And
how'd you get to LA though?
I was on a 777 on the way out. These guys, I can't really say much, but it was like flying with 2 grandpas, literally. And one of the guys,
leave the left blinker on for like 500 miles.
Look, I was sitting there the whole time going, I hope I'm not acting like this, because if I am, I'm going to tell my co-pilot to slap me around or tell me to retire. Anyway,
retire.
Shut up. And so when we were flying out of Atlanta, it was the first officer's leg, And so he was hand flying this 777. 777 is a fly-by-wire airplane. And, we remember the conversation we've been having in the last few episodes about fly-by-wire. And I thought that, the fact that everything's running through computers and, it probably is making somebody that may not have really, stellar flying skills look really, really good. I have changed my opinion on that.
Have you now?
Yes, I have. Clearly, this guy, the computers didn't help. The fly-by-wire system did not help at all. And I'm thinking, wow, I have egg on my face because I was completely wrong about my supposition that the fly-by-wire computer system and everything else would kind of smooth everything out and make maybe an average pilot seem like a super way above average pilot.
Did you consider that maybe he's not an average pilot?
Yeah, maybe below average. I don't know, but
no, I shouldn't be insinuating.
Yeah, I really don't want to be too hard on
No.
guy, but clearly, the idea that I had in my head about fly-by-wire systems was wrong.
Gotcha.
So that was a anecdotal, empirical evidence on my part that I witnessed. So I take everything back. It doesn't matter whether it's a fly-by-wire system or it's not a fly-by-wire system. Going through computers or not going through computers, if you're not a smooth pilot on the controls, you're not going to be a smooth pilot. I mean, you're just not going to experience smoothness as a passenger. So I'll just leave it at that. And the other thing I wanted to say, and it doesn't really pay me to say it because I love all airplanes. I haven't had the opportunity to fly the Airbus cockpit, the platform, but I have to say, this is a pretty new airplane. I think it was September of 2016 when we accepted delivery on this 321. So a year and a half old. And so it was, it didn't have that new airplane smell still, but it was still, you could tell it was a reasonably new airplane because the airplanes that we're flying are 25 years old or something like that. Yeah, at least. So like all the trim is hanging off, falling apart. It's pretty bad up there. But anyway, I thought, this is pretty nice. And I was starting to almost think like, I got a little over 5 years to go. I mean, this is an option for me, maybe. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm still thinking I'll stay on the 88 for a bit longer and see how things pan out. But we were having a discussion earlier about how the way they're going to use the Mad Dogs in the next several years before they're completely retired is going to be not optimum. In other words, flying a lot of short legs and probably multiple legs per day. Just the kind of flying that I really don't want. I mean, I don't mind short legs. I just don't want to do 5 or 6 in a day. So we'll see. Anyway, yeah, so much.
Yeah, working all day is terrible.
Josine says, yeah, so much for my auto-tune analogy. I know. I was right there with you, Josine, but nah, that analogy does not work in this case, apparently.
Auto-tune would not fix my singing, by the way. So I can support that. I can support the destruction of all those theories.
Okay. Anyway, so
it might fix that Jeep of yours there.
No, it doesn't need any fixing. It's perfect the way it is.
Oh, it's fixed, is it? Okay.
Is it all fixed?
It's all fixed.
Good.
Okay.
So anyway, just wanted to say that I was impressed with the way the airplane flew and the cockpit arrangement and all that kind of stuff. So, that's all I want to say about that.
Cool.
And let's see, Plain Tales. We've been working on that on the APG website for quite some time, and I can say now officially, yay, noisemakers, applause, all that kind of stuff. It's officially now released on the website. There's a menu item at the top menu bar, unless you're listening or on a smartphone device or whatever, then you just look. One of the menu options is the Old Pilot's Plain Tales. Now, it's not completely 100% finished, but most of the episodes are on there, and I just have a little bit more work to do to upload those audio files to the server, and then Nick will do his magic and put in some pictures and that kind of thing, and then it will be complete, and then we'll be current every episode that we publish of the regular APG show. Along with that, I'll be publishing the standalone Plain Tales file. So you'll be able to also subscribe to it in your favorite podcast subscription client. And so if you just want to listen to Nick's wonderful Plain Tales and not the rest of us and all the other wonderful things that we do, I'll be sad to hear that, but it'll be available for you if you want. So
they won't ever want to do that, Jeff.
Well, some of these people, they're not nice people, Nick.
I mean, perhaps if they've got got to go to the loo, they might go, well, I'll do a quick Plain Tale on the loo rather than 3 hours, because this is not going to be
an appropriate place for it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I'm thinking.
So anyway, so we have that finally accomplished, almost completely.
And thank you very much, Jeff. A lot of hard work putting all that up, much harder than I think we all thought it was going to be.
Yeah, well, when I mentioned doing that, it just didn't dawn on me how many of those things you've done.
Small side project. Be really
amazing.
Take care of. Yeah.
You have a lot. I mean, and of course that means that it's an incredible amount of work that you've done over time, week after week after week. So thank you, Captain Nick, for
I enjoy it. It's a labor of love.
Well, yes, I understand that. All right, good. And I think that was about all I was going to say. So now I'll shut up and let Dana talk again.
I have nothing to say now.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. So
let's move on.
Move on. Okay. Here we go. My week, I had the recurrent training. And for anybody that wants to listen, I'm going to plug Patreon here, because we've been doing more of the crew logs. So I have a whole bunch of information on what happened in training this past week on the crew log. So I would recommend joining Patreon, so that if you want to listen to some of the stuff that Nick puts out, myself, Steph, Jeff. Yeah. This guy over here.
Occasionally.
So you had the training, recurrent training went well. No debrief items on the second day, which is more or less a check ride. So that was very nice. And then, before that, this past weekend, my in-laws drove up from Stuart, Florida, and driving through the Atlanta metropolitan area on the way home to the Boston area. And we had, they had no clue that we had bought the USS APGB. And so it was.
You don't really have to call it that, but that's kind of fun.
It is kind of fun, isn't it? Yeah. At least for the show. I don't know what the name's going to be yet. Yeah. But so we completely surprised them. They had no idea we had the boat. And so we took them out for an evening cruise on Friday evening and had a very nice weekend with them. And then Monday and Tuesday was my training. And Jeff had alluded to the fact that I picked this trip up in open time. I feel very fortunate that this trip came open, because that enabled me to be able to fly with not only Captain Jeff, who is one of my all-time favorites to obviously fly with, but one of my old-time friends, Tony, and former co-guest host, I guess we could say, Gary, which is also my riding buddy. He was also a captain Acme. He's going to be my last ship I get to fly with. So I was able to work it all out so that I could fly with 3 of my closest friends before I go to upgrade training on May 5th. And speaking of that, what we have is called a conversion. That's when it becomes official that they are intending on putting me in that left seat. That became official day before yesterday. So it's looking like May 5th is officially the day I convert over to the left seat and go ahead, or on May 1st, actually, and then I'll be through training. I start on the 5th. I believe it's a 7-day course. I haven't seen the schedule yet. And by the end of May, for sure, I'll be done with OE and officially wearing the 4th stripe. And speaking of that,
just a quick pause. I'm going to angle this a little bit. Oops.
Just a little bit now. Just a little bit.
No, that was more than I was expecting. There,
she said.
Yeah, because you keep looking over at me, and when you do that, your voice is getting like off access, and I can't really hear it.
Look at the camera.
I'm always thinking about the audio.
Look at the camera.
Okay,
it'd be much more attractive anyway.
And I'll see you looking at the camera, and then I'm looking here, and you're looking at me.
That's right.
Ooh, that's kind of cool.
That's kind of cool. So, anyways, not usual that we actually do these co-broadcasts together next to each other. So, anyways, very emotional day yesterday. I was both very excited and very sad because, make a very long story short, is I know that this is the last time, more than likely in my career, unless something happens down the line where I go backwards, that there's going to be the opportunity to fly with Jeff. So that for me is very sad, but also excited because it's my last, I'm getting to fly with Jeff one last time, which worked out fortunately. So yesterday morning when we showed up for the trip, sitting there, and he presented me with something that really
A bunch of things,
but I'm going to talk about the most important thing first.
Oh, okay.
Flowers?
And that flower, yes, he gave me flowers.
Bunch of flowers?
Black roses. And he gave me my epaulets, my captain epaulets. So that was very moving for me. That's a very nice gesture on Jeff's part, and really something I'll never forget the rest of my life, and truly appreciative of him taking the time and recognizing that that I'm going to be upgrading to captain. It was really just truly an honor. Also, he presented me with some other things that I, wanted to make sure I recognized, because it's been a while since we've talked about it numerous times. We've actually showed them on the video feed before, and just want to recognize some people for taking the time to make sure that I got some nice gifts. And Mike Cochran, thank you very much for that beautiful Yeti tumbler that was presented to me by Captain Jeff, and it has my name, Captain Dana, on it, and I really, truly also hit my heart as well.
And it had some Reese's peanut butter cups in there, too.
It did. Well, it used to.
Oh,
No,
well, it did.
No, I'm only kidding. They're still there. I'm trying to stay away from that stuff. I'm slowly going through them. Normally, in the old days, they would have been gone. Armando, that fantastic coin, I put that in my bag. I'll keep that in my flight bag as a good luck coin. We've all, everybody else has a coin now. And then Tom Seagraves, Arthur Bryant's barbecue sauce. I'm looking forward to using that. And speaking of cooking, one of the most important things for the boat, I bought it this week. I bought a beautiful grill that's going to be on the boat, so I can cook anytime we get out there on the boat. And yes, we will be having a meetup. Just a matter of me figuring out my schedule, and we will be doing a meetup this summer for sure on the boat here in Atlanta. So stay tuned for that one, and really looking forward to this next chapter of my life. It's going to be challenging. The schedule is going to be challenging. Jeff is an unbelievable mentor. He's allowed me to sit in the left seat, not flying, of course, but doing the pre-flight flows, getting used to sitting over there, used to, believe it or not, just typing with my right hand on the FMS. I'm so used to my left hand on the FMS, so typing with my right hand and doing everything with my right hand, and setting up the flight deck and getting everything done as I would as a captain, and also allowing me to think about things and analyze things. Like this morning, coming out of Northwest Regional Airport, it was half mile and mist, and of course one of the first things I thought about, we need takeoff alternate, and what's the runway, what's the adequate visibility on this runway, can we take off on this runway, looking at the weather, looking at alternates, etc. So allowing me to really mentor me, I guess is the best word, and I'm very fortunate. So
yeah, basically he's the captain and first officer on the trip, and I'm just kind of, the captain of record.
You are the captain of record and sitting in your appropriate seat, but I'm, thinking about when to turn the seatbelt sign on and off, thinking about lights, thinking about, what I should be looking at, fuel, what my alternate is.
He's thinking a lot more about things than I ever do.
No, that's okay. I might not so much after I go through OE, but I have to, make sure I get through operations experience. So I'm looking forward to it. This great chapter, and everybody in the community that's been so very supportive. I just look forward to sharing this with everybody as I go through, and I will continue to. And another reason why I joined, the Patreon is I will be posting my experiences as I go through on the crew logs, as I have time to do so. So stay tuned.
Excellent. So, hey, I know that you were up in Cleveland a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about it yesterday. And I said to Dana, well, you recorded something for that, right? He goes, yeah. I said, did we play that on the show? And he goes, I don't think so. I went, oh, sorry.
Well, it kind of went that way.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to present
you're trying to make it look good, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to make myself not look so bad. So turns out that we didn't play this meetup audio that you recorded with James. I don't think we did. Did we,
Well,
Steph?
I don't think so. And truth be told, that following week, that
I probably the wrong person to ask.
Don't ask Steph.
Sorry.
Down here.
I asked
I don't know
James.
what we've
and
talked about.
He said no, and he would know.
He would know.
But
Yes.
truth be told, is that week after I recorded that, I was not on the show, so thus that's why it kind of got dropped. So
Yeah, it was.
this is for you, James.
Yeah. So let's play this.
Well, hello there, APG. This is First Officer Dana, and I'm in Cleveland this afternoon. For those that may have been listening to podcast 314, I was at the beginning of the podcast and received a call from Cruise Scheduling and said, hey, we have a white slip. I'm sure most of you have heard of. White slip is just a straight time, extra time trip available. And I said, well, sure, I'll take it. I need to pick up a little extra flying, and especially for that new boat. So anyways, picked up this trip up to Cleveland and contacted James that was on the podcast in the chat room and said, hey, what are you doing for dinner tonight? And he said, well, I'm actually free. So came up here, and here at the restaurant called Taza, which is a Middle Eastern Lebanese type of restaurant, and the food here is fantastic. So if you are ever in the Cleveland area, not that I'm plugging anybody or anything, come on over to this fantastic restaurant if you like that type of food. And James said he really enjoyed his dinner. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand the mic over to James, and he can go ahead and give you his feedback from today. And hopefully this is we'll log this is our crew log for the week. And maybe not. Maybe I'll do a separate crew log. We'll see. But anyways, here's James.
Hello, everyone. APGers. This is James Balch, a.k.a. Speedy, because the last time people might have remembered I saw Jeff, I was so excited. And last summer, I got a speeding ticket literally coming back to Columbus from Northeast Ohio. Again, it's a pleasure to have Dana back in Cleveland. I keep saying Columbus because I'm from Columbus. Proud Buckeye. The other C. Again, great dinner. It's just great to talk about the passion of aviation. No matter how many times we talk about it, I never take it for granted that people like Dana, Jeff, and Nick, and everyone else take their time and passion to talk about it. So lovely, great topics talked about, like how many years is the Mad Dog going to fly? Or better yet, what's Dana's favorite airport to fly into? And most importantly, what the journey Dana took to become a pilot, and really what it says about him and his passion and how he cares about being a professional. And I never take that for granted in terms of what I do in finance, of everything that he does every day to make sure a flight comes safe. If businesses ran like pilots flew planes, I think businesses would do a lot more successful. So I'll leave it to Dana. Again, love you all. APG is truly a family, and one I'm very glad to be part of. Thank you.
Well, very kind words there, James. Certainly always a pleasure to see you and hang out and talk aviation, which is actually the whole reason why all of us at the APG do the show. Really enjoy it, and enjoy the enthusiasm that you share with all of us by being involved and willing to come out and have a nice dinner and talk shop. So thank you for coming here, and enjoy the comments that you just made. I'm sure all of our followers will enjoy that as well. And for now, I'm just going to say tally ho. Talons, Douglas. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Well, very nice very nice meetup audio.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to get together with James. Very short.
Thank you.
You moved it so far away from me. I get this. I mean,
Oh,
he
sorry.
doesn't realize is I have this big old chest of drawers right here where my legs will be.
Oh, here, I'm
so
sorry.
there's really no way for me to.
Can you? Here, I'll move over this way a little bit.
Well, then we're really close. I don't want to get that close because you smell like fish.
Didn't you guys both have the fish?
Podcast.
I'm only kidding. So, anyways,
Is this what you bickered like on the aircraft?
no,
No, it's a lot worse on the airplane.
we can get close on the airplane. So, anyways, yeah, an absolute pleasure to spend the afternoon with James and talk aviation, talk about his aspirations in his career field, and I've heard from him since, and it seems as though things are going his way. So I'm very happy to hear that.
Awesome.
A great community to be a part of, and I feel fortunate that we were able to get together on that short notice. So had a good time.
Awesome. And we'll probably have some audio to play next week because after today's show here in Omaha, we're heading over to Blatt's Beer and Table, which is pretty close to the hotel and next to the stadium here. And we are going to have a meetup and meet up with Dirk and a few others that have RSVP'd on our Facebook social media stuff. So look forward to that, and we'll play that on the next show. So anything else before we move on to the coffee fund?
No.
Steph, Nick?
No, I'm good.
All right, let's do it.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks. I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
Okay, the Coffee Fund is your way to support the show financially. And you could do that by becoming part of the Coffee Fund cadre. And one of the benefits of becoming one of the members of the Coffee Fund cadre is, as Dana mentioned, we put out periodic short audios that kind of deal with various subjects and mostly just very casual, behind the scenes kind of stuff that's going on with the crew and with those of us on it's the same thing. Those of us on the show and the crew. Anyway, since the last episode, we've had a few people contribute, and let me read their names. There are a couple different ways that you can participate in the Coffee Fund. One is the Coffee Fund Classic method via PayPal. And since the last show, Aaron Kopke, Steve Trumbull, Kevin Cole, and Mazuz Karim sent in their donations. Thank you very much for that. And you can also do it via Patreon. You can become a patron of the show by joining patreon.com/airline pilot guy. And since the last episode, we have Dom Burke, Tim Hitchcock, Dave Proctor, Tillman, and Andrew Neal all have become new producers of the show, and Dom is an executive producer. So thank you very much, each and every one of you, for becoming a patron of the show. And again, if you want to learn more about how you can participate in that way, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. Thanks. Okay, the first item in the news was sent to us by Jeff Felmuth, and he says in his text, he brought the wrong kind of Coke. Well, what is this about? An airline worker busted with 9 pounds of cocaine taped to his legs. This is from CNN. A crew member of Fly Jamaica Airways I've never even heard of Fly Jamaica
I
Airlines.
haven't either.
Nope.
Has been arrested for attempting to smuggle cocaine into the United States, according to a statement by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The drugs were discovered after the man was escorted into a private search room at JFK International Airport in New York on March 17th. His flight had arrived from Montego Bay, Jamaica. Federal agents said they discovered 4 packages taped to his legs. 9 pounds of cocaine was seized, with a reported street value of $160,000. Photos released by the CBP show the subject in his airline uniform with pants pulled down and white tape around his thighs and ankle. The suspect has been charged with federal narcotics smuggling and will be prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And the picture just basically says it all. Yeah, it almost looks like ace bandages or something. I don't know what is.
Yeah, it looks like he suffered, a horrific accident or something, but it's really just holding all that cocaine in place, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know why people think they can get away, or maybe people are getting away with it.
Probably, maybe he's gotten away with it before.
I wonder if they have like can dogs sniff that?
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, they can.
Yeah, when they package it, I believe they try and mix coffee grounds with it, anything to disguise the smell, put the dogs off. But those dogs are pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, oh well, nice try, but didn't work. All right, the second item: EasyJet pilots suspended over mid-flight Snapchat clips. Now, Snapchat is one of those social media sites that we don't really have a presence on at the.
Yeah, we don't need another one.
No, we don't.
To be honest, I can't even figure out how to use Snapchat, which makes me feel really old. I'm like,
but you know what? It's
I should know how to
stupid.
use it. Yeah.
Sorry, that's my opinion, my personal opinion. But the kids, they love the Snapchat, man.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, 2 EasyJet pilots have been suspended after one of them posted videos on Snapchat during a flight. Captain Michael C. captured his co-pilot dancing as a cartoon Captain Michael captured his co-pilot dancing as a cartoon avatar moved around on screen in one clip, while in another, a virtual bird could be seen moving around the screen as his colleague filled in paperwork. The videos obtained by The Sun were filmed during a flight from Paris to Madrid on Wednesday. A passenger told the newspaper, EasyJet pilot dancing during the flight. Irresponsible. An EasyJet spokesperson stressed the safety of the passengers was at no point compromised, but added the pilots would be spoken to, as this falls well short of the high standards EasyJet expects of its pilots. I'm thinking, I hope that's all they're going to get. They're just going to be spoken to. Wow.
I would think that's a clear violation of. I would think that that's a clear violation of. I don't know what their policy. Is it? What's it over there?
Social media policy or electronic
social media policy, or even the FAA sterile cockpit. Not the sterile cockpit, but the FAA has certain stipulations on media devices or electronic devices for crew members being used. So I would imagine that's a violation over there with the authorities in Europe.
Although they may not be as strict. I know that the regulatory agencies have certain rules, and then airlines can actually be more restrictive, and Acme is one which is very restrictive when it comes to electronic devices that are not authorized in the cockpit. So yeah I don't know what the rules are over there at EasyJet, but apparently it was not a good idea to have so much fun with Snapchat and publish it. And you just wonder,
why
did they even think about the fact that perhaps this would become a viral thing, and maybe they could be identified? And I just doesn't seem smart at all. It was like they weren't even thinking about that.
I think if you go on the internet, you can find hundreds of videos taken from the flight deck.
Captain Nick's videos.
Yep. You can.
He's got a whole series actually on Snapchat.
I'd like to get to my retirement without a smirch on my character.
It's what's your idea again on Snapchat, Captain Nixter?
Yeah,
old
snappy pilot. Yeah, I mean, guys use the cameras. We have to have iPads out Some of them on some airlines are live connected because that's the way the functionality, and it will occur in my outfit. When the functionality of the equipment is upgraded, we will have live internet feeding those iPads during the flight. If it's during a quiet part of the flight when nothing is happening, I personally, and this is an absolutely personal thought, so long as one of you's flying the airplane, the other one can get his camera out. And I don't see a lot of difference between getting your camera out if it's a camera and getting your phone out if it has a camera on it. Now, yeah, it's not ideal. I'm talking of cameras. You've got a very strange color, Jeff.
Thank you. I'm feeling a little sick.
Yeah, I think there's an appropriate moment and there's not an appropriate moment. And I would hope these guys use judgment, good judgment, if they were going to do this. And I'm not defending them, but I'm just saying they were the unlucky ones who got picked up by a major tabloid, and it was splashed all over the internet through that and became viral. Whereas for hundreds of other pilots, it hasn't happened that way. So they haven't had a problem.
Yeah. I think you make a good point. Maybe it has more to do with just bad judgment than it does with actually doing something unsafe.
Yeah, and the attitudes, the airline's attitude, which is they will always take the quote safe option. They won't ever try and defend a pilot who's doing this. So if you do it and someone zeroes in on you, then the chances are the airline's going to come down on you.
Yeah. And then Jen in the chat room makes a good point that one of the appeals of a social media site like Snapchat is that supposedly this kind of stuff is supposed to be only last for a certain amount of time and then it, quote, disappears. But she also adds, nothing is private and nothing really disappears, because if you post something on a media site like Snapchat, even though it's going to disappear within 24 hours or whatever the time frame is, if somebody is watching it at the time, they can go ahead and record it from their screen, and now it's there for eternity, basically. Now, obviously, Dana wants to share something with his phone. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we're not going to talk about
not
that.
even sure what that's about. HR is making notes.
Move on. Moving on.
I'm sure we'll get some random text at an inappropriate time later on that will cause us to lose our focus as well.
Yeah,
and I would like the listeners of the APG to know that HR does have very high standards for our social media use as well.
Absolutely.
Use during the recording of a show. So just saying.
I told you, Dana. He's watching.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Then we can't show that photo then.
Okay. Yes. All right, let's move it on. Travelers left stranded for 3 days following arrest of drunk plane pilot. This was sent in to us by Matt, and he said, this came up in my news feed, thought it was extraordinary. Passengers aboard a flight canceled after a co-pilot was found to be drunk will likely have to wait 3 days to be flown to their destination. Let's see, flight TP523. I'm trying to remember the name of the airline.
Air Portugal.
TAP. Okay. Air Portugal. From Stuttgart to Lisbon was stopped shortly before takeoff on Friday when an airport worker noticed the co-pilot seemed unsteady on his feet and reeked of alcohol, police and state prosecutor's office said. The worker informed airport police and aviation authorities, who determined that the 40-year-old was unfit to fly. He was detained and bail was set at 10,000 euros. The co-pilot was also asked to surrender his flying license. Passengers were forced to stay at a local hotel as they waited to be rescheduled, as there wasn't a replacement crew available to fly them to Lisbon. They will be forced to wait until Monday, the passengers. At the moment, the first day with seats available to be flown home, airline TAP Air Portugal said on Friday. This tweet was in response to one by a passenger who had complained about the long wait for a substitute flight. Police have declined to give any additional details. And unfortunately, every month or 2 or 3 on the show, we, have one of these items where, somebody just didn't think or didn't stop drinking at the appropriate time. And, they, I guess maybe they think they're going to get away with it. Maybe they think that they're not really drunk.
The alcohol
affected.
tells them that they're going to get away with it just fine.
Yes. Yeah, that's the downside, I guess.
Yeah.
Anywho, anything else to say about that? Really, not a lot to say.
No,
No,
we had a lot of
terribly
opportunities
sad.
for some bad boys theme music.
Oh
that's
shoot,
all.
yeah, we did.
We could have done it
Oh,
with
well.
the first one too. That's all right. Sorry. You
Okay.
can put that in post.
Well, where's the producer? Where's the board operator?
Oh, he's sitting right to my left.
I'm looking at him. I'm looking at him right there. I can see him.
Okay, well, I can always put it in on
enamored
post.
by my presence, so he's forgetting things.
That's it.
He was just used to having you do everything for him today.
Right. That's right.
It's really your
That's right.
job, Dana.
Why didn't you
That's-
play
that's
the
true.
Bad Boys music?
Because I don't want to mess up the podcast. That's why. Because if I touch anything on this computer, it might blow up.
That's true. Yeah, it's on a string and a prayer or something like that. No, wing and a prayer.
Ringing
Okay.
a prayer.
Moving on. D. Flat Earther's steam-powered rocket lofts him 1,875 feet up into the Mojave
Wow, he
Desert
did it.
sky. I know. Can you?
I can't believe he survived it. Did he survive this?
He did. Here we go. Listen. There he goes. That was actual audio of his steam-powered rocket. And no, it didn't. It almost did. I think that last bit of sputtering was the parachute being
Deploying.
deployed. They must have some kind of a rocket, something that did that. But anyway, this guy, we've talked about him before, Mike Hughes. He's supposedly a flat earther, but I don't really think he is. I think he's just trying to get publicity and support from these people. But he finally went up, just like the self-taught rocket man always pledged he would. He came back down in one piece, too. A little dinged up. Yeah, if you look at some of the videos on YouTube, you'll see he was in pretty bad shape. I think he may have broken his back.
He broke him back.
Broken his back. And anyway,
No more beer for you.
mission accomplished. Now, I don't know how in the world he could tell whether the Earth was round or flat. He only made it. He didn't even make it 2,000 feet high.
Well, I mean, obviously, you're going to be able to see the Earth's curvature as soon as you get any elevation above the.
Well,
that's
he
true.
says he got high enough to believe that the Earth is shaped like a frisbee. So it's
Mhm.
not entirely flat anymore. It's obviously got curvy edging.
Yeah, well, I don't think he was there that long because by the time he got up to 1,800 feet, he's already on his way back down.
And straight down, by the way. You need to watch the
Straight
videos. The thing was like coming straight down and thinking, oh, this is not going to end well at all.
Did he build his own parachute too?
I don't know.
I
And
don't
he had
want
to.
to know.
He said he had to deploy the second one because he was coming down pretty rapidly. So
I think that is
anyway,
fair.
so Mr. Hughes, Mike Hughes, ex limo driver, and his own personal steam-powered rocket, did it. He did it. There was some article I was reading that said that I think that Elon Musk should hire him.
Hmm.
I think he's more likely to fulfill his next plan, which is to become the governor.
Yeah, that's true. And
Filling
he is
out his
not
paperwork,
California?
run for
Well, that would be more fitting because he's full of hot air, apparently.
There you go.
Thus, he's a politician.
he has filled out the paperwork to run for governor. Nick is right. He's not making this up. And Hughes says, this is no joke. I want to do it. Okay, so I think maybe he hit his head a little bit too hard on something earlier in his life. Anyway, so
His
we just
mom-
wanted to kind of
His
follow
mama
that up.
dropped him on his head.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. It happens. My mom dropped me several times.
It explains a lot.
I know.
Actually, can you imagine? That sounds terrifying. Get on your own steam-powered rocket and get up to 1,875 feet. That's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yep.
He must know that it's possible that he's going to kill himself every time he tries to do a stunt like this.
I think
Here's
more
what it-
effective would be Coke with Mentos.
yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Put a whole, big old,
Just get a swimming
huge
pool.
jug, a swimming pool size worth of Coca-Cola.
Coke.
Drop an entire crate of Mentos in
I
there.
think you could get
and
more than 2,000 feet with that.
You probably
Easy.
could.
Probably easily.
Of course, the G-forces would probably, rip your head off your neck.
Pass out and fail to deploy the parachute, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So many bad outcomes possible. Anyway.
Ooh, speaking of bad outcomes, we talked about the flight attendant who fell from the Emirates Boeing 777 at Entebbe. The police now say, and I kind of poo-pooed this idea, but apparently it is true, according to the police, that the young lady, 46-year-old Bulgarian national Elena Vasileva, she was part of the Emirates crew on flight 730, and they were preparing to fly to Dubai from Entebbe. And she actually didn't fall from the exit door. She actually jumped from the exit door to commit suicide. So that is, according to these reports, official.
Yeah, apparently they've got video evidence.
Yeah, apparently so.
It doesn't seem very high to try to commit suicide. I mean, you can, from any height you can fall and kill yourself, but jumping out of an airplane out of the door, it's not very high. It's a high risk. You're not going to succeed.
Yeah, high enough.
Well, there's an awful lot of suicide attempts that aren't really made with the conclusive thought that you'll actually end your life. A lot of suicide attempts are made with the appeal for help, an appeal for help. So it may be that she was in two minds and this was a halfway house.
Yeah.
Either way.
Good point.
Emirates wouldn't allow her to leave.
I don't know. Not sure exactly what was involved there, but apparently they have enough evidence to show that this was not something that was accidental, which is a shame. Now, the last couple of items that we have here in the news folder, we just added today because they're like breaking news pretty much. And let's start with this one.
Boeing, America's largest aerospace company, was reportedly hit by a computer virus today, and there is fear it could cripple production of key aircraft components. Boeing's chief engineer reportedly sent out a memo calling for all hands on deck. The virus is identified as WannaCry, linked to North Korea, which disabled computers around the world last year.
All right, so the WannaCry ransomware virus has hit Boeing, and specifically the North Charleston facility. And then this article that I paired with this also mentions quite a bit about some machines involved in some of the components of the 777. And so I guess that means that it wasn't just the North Charleston plant, but perhaps some others, because I don't think they do any. Maybe they do. Maybe they make some 777 stuff there at that facility as well. But I thought the 777 assembly line was in a different location.
Charleston's primarily.
No, the 787.
I thought it was just a 787, not the 777.
I thought it was 2, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I thought for sure that Charleston was just 787.
No, that's what I was thinking. I don't know. Our percentage rating just went down again.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Dang it.
So that's what I've said, because this article keeps talking about 777 parts. And maybe they just made an error and they really mean to say 787. I don't know.
Well, we know how accurate the news media can be.
Yes. Almost as accurate as us.
Yeah. I'm part of the moving here. I'm trying to find a
sweet spot
that actually I'm not pointing towards your microphone too.
Okay. Excellent. Because we want to make sure we hear your voice in full fidelity.
Can there be some editing, Jeff?
Oh, there's going to be a lot. But that's true for every show.
It was last year. This went around a lot of industry, many countries. How come Boeing's computers were still vulnerable to it? Because there's an awful lot of time there to build in defenses to catch this. So you just got to ask the country the question: does any company out there with major use of computers, keeps a lot of data on computers, are essential to their work, not have security built in that'll kill WannaCry? It's been out there for so long now.
Well, just last week, the city of Atlanta got hit by that same virus and basically took out some key, critical computer-related areas of the city of Atlanta, including the Wi-Fi at the Atlanta International Airport. And I think they wanted the ransom was $51,000 in Bitcoin. I'm not sure if the city of Atlanta actually pwned up, and why 51,000, not even 50
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, yeah, because Bitcoin, and that makes sense actually. That's an untraceable form of currency. So, I don't know. You're right.
I wonder if I don't know anything about making or designing computer viruses, software viruses, but can they tweak them slightly just like real viruses? So, a defense that might have been working in the past is no longer adequate and it becomes vulnerable again if they just make slight little changes, even though it's basically the same program. I don't know. But that was just my thought on it. So.
Part of this article,
mutations.
Specifically introduced. I don't know.
Part of this particular article that we're looking at, one of the people that they're interviewing here is a gentleman that has a company, and he has a software fix called Tear Stopper that he said prevents WannaCry viruses from encrypting files. So I don't know. That's a good question, though. I mean, you'd think that especially these big corporations that don't want to be exposed to something like this would, have top of the line, top shelf security people to make sure that there's just no way that anybody could ever infect anything in their manufacturing processes. But
which brings up an excellent point. I mean, these aircraft are so computerized. What's not to say that somehow, somewhere along the manufacture process, the computers that they're putting on these aircraft don't have some type of a hidden virus that is laying dormant until a certain time to, basically attack an aircraft while it's airborne.
We have enough trouble getting people on our airplanes. I think dreaming up new ideas as to why people shouldn't fly.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, that's the best way. On a Mad Dog.
That could never happen.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
That could, never happen.
I'm afraid I can't do that.
Wait, is somebody taking over our system here?
What's the problem?
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just
Jeff.
as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
Oh, no. This mission, the APG, is too valuable for the computer to let me mess it up.
Okay.
Hal was a great computer. I used to like him. Why did they have to kill him? He was nice.
Oh, I know.
He
So
could
sad.
sing songs.
Your friend.
Like Daisy.
Neil said this is why we need steam rockets.
That's right.
Or good old-fashioned steam cages.
Or coal-powered airplanes like the Mad Dog.
Yep.
There you go. And then finally, again, a new piece of news. 2 airline pilots report seeing a UFO while flying over Arizona.
Pilots in 2 different planes, one a Learjet, the other an American Airlines jet, reported seeing a mysterious object over Arizona last month, we have learned. The exchange with air traffic control sounded like something out of the Twilight Zone.
There 7-1 Papa Golf, go ahead.
And was anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago?
There 7-1 Papa Golf, negative.
Okay. Something did. A UFO. Yeah. It's American 1095. Yeah, something just passed over us. Don't know what it was, but it's at least 2,000-3,000 feet above us. So yeah, it passed right over the top of us.
No one has figured out what it was. Other pilots did say they saw nothing.
I see nothing. I know nothing.
I think it was each other. They just didn't realize it was each other.
Do you recognize that last audio clip?
I do not.
Play it for you again.
I see nothing. I know nothing.
Well, if you're somebody my age and watched a lot of sitcoms on TV, no, that's Sergeant Schultz, Hogan's Heroes.
Who?
Oh, Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, that's what that was his thing. I see nothing.
I know nothing.
Yeah. All right. Enough of all that. I guess now it's time to put everybody out of their misery and get to the best part of the show, which, of course, is your feedback. Hey. That wasn't right. Try that again.
Captain, incoming message.
Thank you. All right. Go into the feedback folder. We're going to start with the first item there, which I believe Steph You're on. You're going to take
I'm
this
on.
one.
All right. This one is from Rebecca. She says, Dr. Steph, caution, this one might take a little research, so a delayed response would be understood and fine. And thank you for that, because we delayed this just a little bit because I think it was in the news folder previously and I hadn't read it in advance, and I wanted to make sure I got some information together just to give you a complete answer on this, because she asked quite a few questions here. So we'll go through it and try and break it down and come up with some answers here for Rebecca. So she says, a funny thing happened the other day when I surfed the web to try and find a nice map of the major and regional airports of North America. I found a great map, but took a few seconds to click around on other products in the pilot shop on the site. I was surprised to see pulse ox monitors for sale. I wondered why they were there in the first place. Then I started thinking about the general flying public as well. I know that altitude, even in a pressurized, well-controlled cabin, lowers the oxygen level in your blood. Are there any medical conditions relating solely to blood oxygen levels alone, which could prevent someone from earning or retaining a pilot's license? For passengers, are there any medical conditions relating to blood oxygen levels which could or should be a cause for persons to think twice before flying, particularly as a passenger on commercial flights? So let's tackle that real quick, because there's a whole bunch more and it kind of goes in a different direction after this. So there are a lot of medical conditions that can interfere with blood oxygen levels. Just quickly, I've talked about this before, and I probably should have looked up the episode of the Airplane Geeks where I actually went into a lot of this in detail with hypoxia and causes for it, and kind of specifically talking about pilots. But hypoxia is really just where the oxygen level in your tissue is decreased. And then there's also hypoxemia, which is the partial pressure, delta P, of oxygen in your bloodstreams, or in the arterial oxygen tension. I see Jeff does not have the delta P bell.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking something.
Sorry. He was not even listening to what I'm talking about. I put Jeff to sleep.
I heard you say it. Yeah. So hang on. Let's see. Let me go over here
Sorry,
to
I
this.
should've given you a heads
It's
up on
very spontaneous, this whole thing, how it works.
Thank you. Delta P.
Okay. Why don't you start from that point, like this never happened until now?
Too late.
Okay.
So there's a lot of reasons why you may not be basically getting enough oxygen into your system. They can be internal causes, or I guess more intrinsic causes, extrinsic causes. They can be congenital things. They can be acquired things. I pulled up a whole list here of stuff. So anemia, where your blood can't carry enough oxygen because it doesn't have enough of the correct molecules to keep that oxygen tension high enough. You can have something like asthma. You can have congenital heart problems that can cause problems with oxygenation to the blood and or tissues. Lung problems is probably the obvious one. A lot of those are acquired, especially things like COPD or emphysema are pretty well known. There are many other lung diseases which can impair the body's ability to bring in oxygen to the tissues. Certain medications can do it. We've definitely talked about things like narcotic pain relievers, different type of anesthetics, pneumonia, so infections, anything where you have direct injury to the lungs or something blocking the blood supply to the lungs, like a blood clot. Sleep apnea can do it. Fibrosis in the lungs, where the lungs can't expand and actually bring in the oxygen or bring in the air in the first place. So all kinds of things and all kinds of different mechanisms for why you may not be able to have sufficient or appropriate oxygen levels. And we won't get into all of that, but as you can see, it's really kind of wide varying. Certainly some of those things would prevent pilots from potentially getting a medical certificate, but a lot of those are also individual basis and depends on how well the condition is managed and the chronicity and all kinds of other things. So lots of stuff to potentially get into there, but there's plenty of different things that can do it. So, if you're someone who's a passenger and you are being treated for some of those conditions I named, or if you know you have a condition that your doctor has told you can interfere with your body's ability to be well oxygenated, might be a discussion to have before you get on a airplane, because even though the cabin altitude is, lower with pressurization, it may still be enough to affect that to a greater degree. So let's see here. Rebecca goes on. She says, thank you. I am curious. As recently, I have heard about a condition which mimics the air hunger, in quotes, like exercise-induced asthma. The lung constriction is not involved or present. There is a neurologic root, and I wonder if, as a physician or runner, you have ever heard of such a condition. I do not know any more about it, but had it come up in recent conversation. So air hunger, again, in any of those conditions, you can have it. It doesn't necessarily always have to be because of a lung disease, but it's basically just anytime you feel like you're not getting enough air into your system, where you're having trouble breathing. Even things like anxiety can do that. So someone who's having a panic attack can feel that type of air hunger, where they can't take in a deep breath, even though they are taking in an appropriate breath and oxygenating just fine. So that's what air hunger is. Let's see here. Going back to her questions. So she's talking about a little more. I know some persons who suffer from persistent and or intermittent air hunger, not necessarily diagnosed as related to a neurologic condition, but have suspected to be related to long-term infections. So Lyme disease is an example, not limited to, and she's fascinated with the subject of blood oxygen levels. I am such a nerd. Welcome to the club, Rebecca. We are too. One article I've read suggested that some conditions of air hunger can be related to pH levels. So when a person eats too much food on the acid side of the pH scale, it worsens, but keeping to a more alkaline diet, it improves or resolves. And that has something to do with the rate of release of carbon dioxide. In a highly acidic state, the blood cannot release CO2 as efficiently. Do you have any thoughts on this? Yes, I have a lot of thoughts on this. So I'm not going to get into all of the medical stuff because this is not the medical pilot show per se, but there are different types of acidosis, or too much acidity within the body, that can be brought about by ventilation problems. So there's a thing called respiratory acidosis, where if you have problems breathing, your blood can become too acidic like that. There's also metabolic acidosis, which is not related to breathing in the first place, but can cause hypoxia as well, or hypoxemia, I should say. However, what you're describing is, I think, more related to this recent fad of having a alkaline diet. I don't know if you guys have heard about that at all, where people like to either eat foods that are considered to be more alkaline, or drink water that is supposedly has a pH balance, either neutral or more alkaline. So a little bit about that. There is nothing that you can do to change your diet that's going to significantly alter the pH level of your blood. So nothing you eat, nothing you drink can really change that. That's something that your body regulates very tightly, no matter what. Doesn't have anything to do with the foods that you eat.
Because my wife was like trying out different bottled water, and she must have read something to the effect that, the pH level of these different waters does somehow affect your body's system.
The jury is very out on that, because I mean, the pH level of your system, of your body, is very, very tightly regulated in the first place, and drinking water that's more alkaline is not going to substantially change that. So, however, there may be some benefits to alkaline diets, because a lot of those foods that you're supposed to eat on an alkaline diet, things like fruits and vegetables, drinking a lot of water, avoiding sugar, alcohol, processed foods, hey, guess what? That's pretty healthy anyways. And that's
no fun.
It's no fun. It's not really a fad thing. It's something that, I think any physician, dietitian, nutritionist would recommend.
How about drinking apple cider vinegar?
I don't know much about apple cider vinegar, or that it has any specific
he does.
effects.
Yeah, it's very good for you.
Yeah. Anything
vinegar is good for you?
Apple cider vinegar, or any type of vinegar, is excellent at helping to control the alkaline part of your body.
Yeah. However,
numerous
doesn't your body kind of
where's that? No, it's not. It's it doesn't matter what you consume so much. I mean, if you're eating a lot of things that are bad for you, that are processed, that are sugary, that are, if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, those are things that are just unhealthy in general. But it isn't, those things in and of themselves, without having another illness or pathologic process in place, are not going to change that pH balance. So
there.
So there it is.
Yeah.
Dr. Seth has spoken.
Yeah.
She has told me.
And I get lots of questions in my line of work about, not so much for alkaline stuff, but people always want to know, well, what foods do I eat to decrease inflammation? Or there's really no great research on any of that. But again, we know that maintaining a healthy diet is important in general, because it helps maintain a healthy weight. It keeps we don't want you having those spikes of sugar and insulin and, having high alcohol content in your system. That stuff's just not healthy in general. So, she has a little bit more here. I'll keep going. She says, I realize it's way down there in topics directly related to aviation, but I think good nutrition for optimal cognitive function and awareness is pertinent. Yes, it is. If there is validity to acid alkaline scare in regards to nutrition, then excellent care and feeding of pilots and cabin crew would be beneficial for clarity, anti-inflammation, stronger immunity, and an overall short and long-term benefits of good nutrition and fitness, like strength training and running. Yes, absolutely correct there. And like I said, the things that are espoused as part of the alkaline diet are generally healthy foods anyway, which we would recommend. So along those lines, recently someone from the APG community asked about fitness and nutrition for pilots and crew. They may be interested in a website called Pilot Fitness. They have online courses and resources to keep all of you pilots in tip-top condition and fit to fly. So here's a link if you would like to include it in the show notes, Captain Jeff. www.pilotfitness.com. So thanks, Jeff.
Somebody was requesting that from the chat room.
Thanks, whoever that
Wasn't
was
me.
in the chat room.
Wasn't me. Of course, I could have resisted that. I ended up,
I mean, it basically, all of this stuff for me boils down to common sense stuff. She has some good questions about going back to hypoxia and hypoxemia. From an aviation standpoint, they're maybe a little bit more applicable to those of us that are not flying pressurized aircraft and are maybe flying at higher altitudes. So if you're a general aviation pilot and you're flying above 12,500 feet up to, and I think including 14,000 feet for more than 30 minutes, then the regulations, the FAA says you must wear supplemental oxygen after that 30 minutes. If you're above 14,000 feet, the pilot crew, the minimum required pilot crew must wear supplemental oxygen. And if you're above 15,000 feet, then the pilots and all of the passengers on board must have supplemental oxygen. So that's for unpressurized aircraft. GA flying. And
cool.
There is some thought to, I've seen this talked about in other pilot forums and things where, especially for night flying or for people who fly above 10,000 feet regularly, maybe having a pulse ox monitor on hand, because they are relatively cheap. And that way you can monitor and just make sure that you're not letting your blood oxygen levels dip dangerously low or to the point where you may have impaired judgment or other signs of hypoxia. And I apologize for the chorus of dogs in the background. I'm sure you can hear them.
Oh, it's part of the ambiance of the show.
Not even my dogs.
Oh, they're not?
No.
No, shoot them. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Very good. Well, I'm glad that you answered that question because I would not have known any of that stuff.
No clue whatsoever.
And
Rebecca, alcohol content. I mean, they could probably answer.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. And it's kind of a bummer, processed foods and too much alcohol.
Oh, it's all the stuff that everyone likes,
Oh, I know.
So, sorry to be the downer there.
Yeah, that's okay.
Pilot fitness seems to include easily to follow meal plans for your trips. No bother. Basically, things you buy in, like those pre-prepared recipes, pre-packaged food options. You can mix and match. No cook homemade meals you can prep in 15 minutes. Great for 4-day trips. Seems like you buy into it, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
But it might have free elements. I don't know. I've only just flicked it up there. Just one of the first things I thought. Welcome to Pilot Fitness Recipes.
And hey, if you want more of that information on hypoxemia, where I discussed it on the Airplane Geeks, Jeff was kind enough to let me know that was episode 362 back in their archives. So
the doctor is in.
Yes.
Episode 362.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember that one?
Oh, the geeks. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. We were only doing 317.
Yeah, come on. We're on 433. Get with
where
the picture.
where have you been, man?
I've been asleep. Sorry.
Go back to sleep.
Go ahead, Dana.
I was going to say this is, a very interesting topic in a lot of ways, because when the FAA redid the rules, I'm not sure that they looked at this, but Part 117, we're not at sea level when we're on an aircraft. We are actually at a much higher elevation For example, in between 5 to 7,000 feet on our aircraft, depending on our altitude, that's pressure altitude. So we're not getting as much oxygen, and it's part of the reason why what we do is very fatiguing, is because throughout an entire day of 12, 14 hours, when we're at altitude cruising along, we're not getting that oxygen. And it's part of why people get end up with oh my god, my memories. You know what? I'm getting old. I didn't get a lot of oxygen today. Jet lag. So dehydration. The lack of oxygen. So that's one of the factors that I think that the FAA failed on to look at when they were doing all its fatigue studies on pilots, is that when we're at altitude, we're not getting as much oxygen. Thus, we're fatiguing, and that's part of this whole hypoxia issue. Obviously, we're not up at higher altitudes, but imagine getting off the airplane, Steph. You used to be in Charlotte, so your elevation there is, I think, what, 300-400 feet,
700
ish, 700. So you get off the airplane in Denver and try to go run a marathon that day or the day after.
Yeah,
you're going to become winded and fatigued very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's exactly what we work in every day, as pilots.
I'm
Nick,
curious. Have you guys ever? Do any of you guys actually have a little pulse ox clip to put on your finger to check and monitor and see?
Just like we have a radio, radioactivity monitor, because we're so much closer to the sun and that much less atmosphere between us and the sun.
I'm just amazed that we're still alive.
I know.
So, Dana, how jet lagged did you get on your 36-minute sector today?
Just very yesterday. That was yesterday.
You got very dehydrated, and you got
3 hours.
Do you remember who I'm flying with over here?
I'm very fatiguing.
He's very fatiguing. No, he's very entertaining. No, very entertaining.
I can see how this is such a big problem for you.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be. I mean, for you, Nick. I mean, especially if you're doing long haul, it's got to be more difficult on your body because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm 63, so.
That's a double whammy then.
My dad did it all his life, 31,000 hours of long haul. So, and he's still going at, 95.
A lot to be said about having good DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let me know where I can find some, will you?
I think you already have it in you.
Good. That's excellent.
Most of my family's dead before they retired at 65.
All my family is dead too. In fact, right now, I think I'm feeling like I'm having a heart attack.
Good thing I will not kiss you.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
I'll find some rubber bag to put over your mouth and put a hole through it.
Okay.
No, honestly,
Okay.
if Jeff were to succumb, I am actually
just leave me there. Let me to die.
Trained for CPR because I am a dive instructor, so I have to be trained on CPR.
Oh, that's
so
how
I would be here.
Is that how you knew about the dive last night that you took me to?
That wasn't the dive. That was damn good food.
I'm just kidding. It was nice. Okay.
No, I'm a foodie.
All right. Number 2.
Fat.
Jeff. European virtual budget airlines questions. Team APG, I have a question regarding European budget airlines. I noticed there is at least one airline based in Spain called Level, which appears to be some sort of rebranded Iberia service. The reservation systems all say aircraft and crew provided by Iberia. Is anyone familiar with this sort of virtual airline arrangement where another company brands itself and seems to rent aircraft and crew? When they do this, do they have the same safety standards as the airline that's doing the flying, or are they allowed to create their own standards like flight attendant training, pilot training, maintenance, etc.? I'm considering an airline like this to save money for a vacation this summer, but am reluctant if these types of airlines are operating under a slightly lower safety standard. Thanks and love the show as always, Jeff Dangle.
Jeff, wasn't that aircraft that the Isle of Man that landed in a crosswind that was twice the aircraft limits? Wasn't this a situation where an airline was leasing another airline to provide aircraft to move their passengers around for them, which is exactly this situation?
It was.
And they came to a very nasty end. Well, almost.
Now, but you could also argue that but they weren't subject to any lessened or relaxed safety standards, right? They still, had to comply with the safety standards of the regulatory agency for which they were certificated, right? Doesn't mean that they actually attained the level of
Good
safety
point.
that, they're supposed to, right? I don't know. So what's your point, Nick? You think that we should tell Jeff that he should stick with the the bona fide carriers and stay away from the ones that are renting airplanes and crew from other airlines?
From other dubious airlines. Because if an airline is virtual, in other words, it's not providing its own aircraft, it's getting other people to fly, bring aircraft in, their crews, their flight deck, their cabin crew, and they're just doing the operating for them. It's very hard for the company to maintain any sort of control or standards check on the people who are doing the flying for them. So you may have a really nice, fancy looking website and a great looking airline in inverted commas. And when you actually get there, the aircraft could be anything. They might be very good. On the other hand, there's no really real way to tell. Whereas an actual airline that has its own aircraft and its own people, does its own training, and has established a good safety record, you know exactly what you're getting. It does what it says on the tin.
I would tend to agree with Nick, and that is that the accountability is far greater for an operator that is better known than a fly by night type of operation. It's easier to regulate. They're less likely to cut corners if they're looked over a little bit more. Like a I don't know, TAP Air or one of the mainline carriers are going to be, I think, under a little bit more scrutiny, unless there's an airline that has had some issue before, then they'll tend to fall under more scrutiny. I would tend to compare this to, if you have a corporate airplane or a business jet compared to, a mainline carrier or a scheduled carrier. You can cut a few more corners in operate aircraft in a little more loose form, and I would think that your better bet is always to go with a more reputable company, and that's with anything. If you look at any company that has a lot of contractors, doesn't have to be in the airline business, but they're any company out there, you deal with contractors, generally speaking, the work isn't as good because they don't take as much pride, because they don't have as tight a tie to the company in the product that they produce, other than you collect a paycheck at the end of the day and you go home. There's not a whole lot of pride there. So I would tend to agree with Nick on every account, and just add those extra thoughts there.
How about you, Steph?
I guess I just wonder. Well, I just wonder more how it works from the crew side that's being basically loaned, leased to this other company. I would expect that they have their contract negotiated by the main parent company that they work for. Does that change at all if they're flying under a different label? Basically, I would expect not. But they would still.
We've been wet leased to airlines, and wet lease is when you provide the whole aircraft and crew, whole 9 yards, and just operate for another airline carrying their passengers. And our condition, I don't get paid differently. Our conditions are different. We might get slightly different allowances. We might get a slightly different hotel. It might be better, might be worse. So it might be a volunteer thing or not. But no, there's in my experience.
But you're not going to perform your job any
differently.
Yeah, well, that's the difference. If a passenger, I hope, flies for ABC Airline, I hope there's not one airline out there with that name, and a Virgin or an airline like that pitches up and does a flight for them, then you would hope they would go, say British Airways pitched up. You would hope they would go, oh, that's a good airline, I don't mind doing that. But when an airline you've never heard of in a filthy dirty airplane with bits hanging off and dripping on the tarmac pitches up, you might go, oh my lord, what have we done here?
Well, let's face it, it's perfectly legal for somebody that's not a airline airframe and power plant AMP to do work on an aircraft as long as it's inspected and signed off by an inspector. So there are maintenance shops in other countries. I'm not going to name any specific countries.
Mexico.
Yeah, I didn't say it. But they're over in the Far East as well. I have personal friends that oversee these operations. And, you get people that kind of know what they're doing because they do it on a regular basis, and they fix whatever is being worked on, put back together, and then you have an inspection on it. And as long as it passes inspection, well, it was not necessarily done by a licensed person to do that work. So, am I saying they're cutting corners? No, I'm not saying they're cutting corners. What I'm saying is that, if you get an operator that is looking to cut cost, then corners can be cut, and you got to be leery of it. But in the end, just like Nick, Steph, Jeff, myself, what it comes down to is self-preservation. As long as you are, as a pilot, wanting to go home to your family and go home to your life after you get on the airplane, you're going to do everything possible as a pilot, or at least a responsible pilot would, to make sure you have a safe flight and that the aircraft is airworthy. But we can't control everything. We can't. So again, it comes down to personal pride. I mean, there's Acme or Virgin or British Airways or Sunwing or all these airlines, they all charter out. It's just a matter of whether the whole crew's chartered, or a contract, or the charter itself. And I say charter, I should be saying charter, not charter. Charter itself is
like clam chowder.
Like clam chowder,
yeah,
like Miami Air. I mean, you've got all these reputable companies that do these charters. And they're reputable companies. So I'm not saying that they're all, fly by night operations, but there are those ones out there that can fly underneath the radar a lot better than a reputable company. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Well, hey, great question, Jeff. I have a feeling that Jeff is probably going to end up spending a little bit more money now that we just answered his question. And saying maybe you should go for the majors that have been doing this for a few years.
Plump for something that's kind of run of the mill. You don't have to go pay too much. Just don't pay too little, because you know what happens when a deal looks too good to be true.
It probably is.
Yep.
Should more in the long run.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Marty writes in, "Hey, APG crew, this is Marty from Eastern PA. This is my first time writing in, but I'm a longtime listener and a huge fan of the show. Keep up the excellent work. It's always a good morning when I wake up to a new APG episode in my podcast app. Wanted to write in to share my story in hopes that it may be of some inspiration to anyone listening who is thinking about pursuing a career in aviation but are feeling trapped in their current career. I'm 33 and just now starting down the path to getting my dream job with an airline. I knew from around age 10 that I wanted to be a pilot. The aviation bug hit me pretty hard. I was a bit of an unruly teenager, so at age 14, my mother and grandmother decided to let me take my first flight lesson, mainly so that they had something to threaten to take away to try to keep me in line. Well, needless to say, my teenage angst disappeared pretty quickly because I didn't want to miss any flying lessons. I guess it worked. After high school, I enrolled in a 2-year local college that offered a professional pilot program and quickly earned my private certificate. I met an amazing woman, all in caps, an amazing woman early on, and we unexpectedly started our family as I was starting my second year of college. Along with starting a family came all the accoutrements, like a car payment and a mortgage and the need to get a real job. So my flying slowed down and eventually just fizzled out a few lessons shy of an instrument rating in early 2004. Fast forward 13 years, and I now have 2 amazing kids, 11 and 13 years of age, and a very supportive and amazing wife who reminded me that at one point in my life, I dreamed of aiming towards something higher, about 35,000 feet higher. So in summer 2016, I called my old flight instructor pal. I'm sorry, I just did something to change the size of my text, so I lost my place. Okay. So in summer 2016, I called my old flight instructor pal, now a first officer for an airline, and begged him to come out of CFI retirement and help me finish this thing up. After a lot of smooth talking, mainly to his wife, she slightly unwillingly agreed. That doesn't sound like a positive endorsement.
Not
She
at all.
slightly unwillingly agreed. I completed my instrument rating in late 2016, got my commercial certificate in November 2017, multi-engine rating in December 2017, and am probably most happy to say I earned my CFI certificate just last weekend on March 18th. I had the pleasure of earning my very first dollar as the pilot the next day, working with a pre-solo private pilot student in a 152 at my flight school. Wow, that happened pretty quick. Now, I'm still pretty far away from piloting anything bigger than a light twin, seeing as that I have to contend with the pesky 1,500-hour ATP rule, and I will be instructing only on my days off from my current job for the world's largest pharmacy company, call them Acme Pharmacy, as a tractor-trailer delivery driver. But luckily, I'm afforded 3 days off per week, so I plan on flying as much as one possibly can in that time off. It's been an amazing journey, both challenging and fulfilling, and filled with highs and lows, pun intended, and everything in between. See, I was feeling like I was trapped in that career that I really didn't want, but it paid the bills and I had trouble seeing the path out and back to what I dreamed of for so long in my youth. It took a lot of support from my beautiful wife. I couldn't have done it without her, and also from my family. Flying is a passion. We don't get into it to get rich quick. My bank account can attest to that. But this is the beginning of a new journey, of waking up each day, looking forward to what the flights ahead have in store, and to continue learning, and mainly to keep chasing that childhood dream of mine, to one day be piloting that jet at 35,000 feet that a 10-year-old looks up at with dreams welling up in their eyes. Thanks for sharing my story. Hope it wasn't too long-winded. I am forever guilty of that. Best regards, he says. Safe flying, clear skies, and tailwinds. Marty from Eastern Pennsylvania. Wow, thanks, Marty. That was great. Very well written, very well expressed. And
Congratulations.
Yeah, and congratulations. That's for sure. That's awesome. I should probably find the applause, right?
It sure sounds like my life story, really. I mean, very similar to that.
I think a lot of people that are listening and, are people that we fly with can share that same kind of story that you just shared with the APG community, because and I'm glad you did, because I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there that feel the same way that you do, and perhaps are still reluctant to make it over that speed bump that they just are uncomfortable with, with doing. But maybe they needed a little nudge, and perhaps your feedback may have helped, Marty.
And we get that question all the time, especially folks who think that they're perhaps too old to start into this career. So definitely not the case.
Not now.
Nope.
No, if you'd had the same aspiration maybe 20 years earlier, then I'd say, oh yeah, you're too old. It's too late. But it's not now. And it may be in 10 to 20 years, perhaps. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I think it's going to keep going. The trend's going to keep going as it is for a while.
I hope so.
Quite a while.
So.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, there's so many people out there that have this story or have this dream, and the only thing that's stopping people from pursuing this dream, in a lot of cases, a lot of cases is going to be money, but a lot of times it's themselves. They're not willing to kind of go off that cliff and go after that dream because they're comfortable in what they're doing, or the money that they make, or the life that they live. If you have a dream, I can attest to it myself personally, and it took a huge risk. I took a better part of a $70,000 a year pay cut when I first jumped off that cliff, and that was really daunting the first year. So it's if you have the drive or interest to do it, then I can say one thing: don't live with regrets. And everything I've done personally, along with the same scenario, is exactly the same. Is you have to take the chance. Things happen for a reason; they'll happen fast. And even as a line pilot, I still have those same thoughts and questions in my life. For example, with the upgrade to the left seat, I didn't want to look back in 10 years and say, well, I should have taken that upgrade and regret never flying the airplane that I love, the Mad Dog, as a captain. I could have moved on to another aircraft and sat in the right seat and been very comfortable. My quality of life, pay is not the issue, but I always would have looked back and said, well, I never flew the airplane that I grew up on flying, teaching, and as a first officer, and not fly as a captain. So even at this level, I look at it and say I don't want to live with regrets. So if you have the inkling, then go for it. That's one of the best parts about this show, is that we're here to encourage people, because simply put, I don't know of any better time in this business than the present. Now, that can change tomorrow. We all know that. It's always a risk, but what in life is not a risk? So go for it.
Take a chance, right?
Take a chance.
Take a chance.
Don't live with
regrets.
Take a chance.
Take a chance. Take a chance.
That was the first thing I thought when you said that.
Great minds, right?
Yes. Love ABBA.
Take a chance on doing what you dream to do.
Yep, I want to get on that stage in that spangly suit and sing along with that.
In fact,
can I do that?
That was Captain Nick's dream, lifelong dream.
It was a personal video of Nick on that stage in his spangling suit or whatever you just said.
Don't wait.
Yeah, I used to have
you still got time to do what you want to do in life.
I used to have a black beard. Did you recognize me now?
Blackbeard.
Oh,
Blackbeard. No, I wasn't a pirate. Pirate. Pirate.
Hi there, matey.
You can be a pirate, a pilot.
Pirate, matey.
A pirate.
I'm still jealous that you'd have a beard. I would love nothing more than be able to have a goatee.
Well, you can buy stick-on ones, Dana.
Well, yeah, we've had this conversation before. We're not going down that road again.
Okay, enough about strap-ons and stick-ons. Let's move on to Kevin, who writes, "Hey guys, and Dr. Steph, I guess he doesn't consider you a guy. We do.
Not
though.
a guy. Yeah. One of the guys.
I'm a newer listener to your show and absolutely loving it. Being about 10 episodes in so far. Great job. Well, thank you, Kevin. I've been an aviation enthusiast for as long as I can remember. I'm not a pilot, but a frequent flyer, logging about 70 segments in 2017, based out of Charlotte. That's a lot of flying. 70 segments in a year, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share my experience and get your opinion on some turbulence I had last spring on an A319 or A320, can't remember for sure, from Nashville to Charlotte. Given the short duration of that particular flight, we weren't at cruising altitude long. I don't recall the flight level at the time, but it was daylight and we were well above the clouds, and we were apparently approaching a storm. I don't recall any chop at all thus far into the flight. I recall a sudden but not significant drop in altitude that for some reason drew my attention out the window, where I noticed a few cumulonimbus clouds in the distance. Within a few seconds of the first drop, the aircraft experienced a significant drop, resulting in beverages hitting the cabin ceiling. Cell phones and tablets took flight all over the cabin, and basically anything unsecured was strewn everywhere, I guess. My pants were wet from other passengers' drinks, but of course, like a good passenger, I always keep my seatbelt fastened, so I remained somewhat grounded. However, I don't recall the seatbelt sign being on, and the cabin crew was just finishing their beverage service, so I'm assuming that it was unexpected to the pilots. Not much was said from the flight deck about what we had experienced, other than asking for the cabin crew to take their seats for the remainder of the flight. As we approached Charlotte, the storms became pretty intense, and we experienced what I would call moderate turbulence, as expected on approach with springtime thunderstorms. We got down to, I would say, a flight level of 010 or 020, so 1,000 or 2,000 feet, and they aborted the landing. Fairly significant lightning was occurring at this time as well. We climbed back out and was informed we were being diverted to Columbia due to lightning. which I later found out that Charlotte had closed to all arriving flights and diverted upwards of 50 flights to other airports. After landing at Columbia, we were informed that one of the flight attendants was injured during that initial turbulence, and the captain had asked that we remain seated so that the emergency medical service can board the aircraft to attend to the flight attendant. Once deplaned, I asked the gate agent if this plane will go back out tonight after the storm front passes, and she said that sensors were damaged from the severe turbulence earlier in the flight and that they had to call maintenance for inspection. Long story short, I grabbed a rental car and drove up to Charlotte that evening. On a flight a few weeks later, I sat next to a pilot deadheading, and he was able to share my experience and showed him pics of the cabin, which I've attached below. He was surprised by the appearance of the cabin. He said it could have been from approaching the storm system, even though we weren't into it yet. He mentioned that in 20 years of flying, he's only experienced something like this once, but he was surprised to hear that the cabin crew was still doing their beverage service when it happened. He thought that the pilot should have known that they were coming into a storm and taken precautions for the crew's safety in advance. He also mentioned that sometimes you just have to lower your speed and punch through it. Either way, the crew shouldn't have been moving around at this time if it was expected. However, he said it really could have come out of nowhere and without warning. Unfortunately, ever since that flight, even light to moderate turbulence gets my heart racing. No real fear of the plane not handling it, just the fear of that big drop again. Prior to this experience, in my years of flying, I rarely noticed any amount of turbulence, so I have never been a fearful flyer. So if any of the great minds at APG, he must think he's listening to a different show.
Yeah, no, it's not us.
Yeah, have experienced something like this, I would love to hear your insights on it. Is it rare? As technology advances, do you see more advanced systems in the future to predict turbulence outside of PIREP's radar and other maps currently used? Could this just be a case of clear air turbulence, or did the storm front we were approaching likely cause this? Maybe too close to CB clouds? P.S. This particular flight I was on standby and hence my seating in the last row now in the pics, which I'm sure added to the bumpy experience. You're right, Kevin. It did. Thanks so much for your time and keep up the great work. Can't wait to hear your next episode. So he has the pictures attached to his email feedback, and wow, what a mess. You can see all the liquids all over the place.
The ceiling.
Yeah, they really literally, the ceiling is dripping and the sidewalls are dripping and stuff is just all over the place. And it was obviously quite a ride that you experienced, Kevin. And yes, being in the back of any airplane definitely does amplify the feeling, the effects of turbulence. It's like you're on the end of a long leverage arm. And so any little movement toward the front gets amplified many, many times if you're sitting back toward the back. So that definitely was part of, usually the injuries that occur during turbulence encounters like this occur mostly toward the back of the airplane. Would you agree, Captain Nick?
Oh, absolutely. And the longer the aircraft is, the more that is amplified. So the most comfortable place to sit is always near the center of gravity, usually around the wing roots. And that you usually feel the turbulence less. We at the flight deck get it, and the back galley get it. And that's worse. Severe turbulence, by the way, is characterized by large, abrupt changes in attitude and altitude with large variations in airspeed. There may be brief periods where effective control of the aircraft is impossible. Loose objects may move around the cabin and damage to aircraft structures may occur. So I think he was definitely in severe turbulence with loose objects flying around. We're given guidelines of how much avoidance we should give from storm clouds. It usually depends on what the radar is showing, and depending on the sophistication of your radar, not only will you get a color code indicating the density of the cloud and the level of rain droplets in it. If you've got a sophisticated velocity indication on your radar, then you'll also get indications of the amount of updrafts and down currents. But that's within the cloud. But don't forget that you don't move that huge mass of air up and down inside a big thunderstorm or cumulonimbus without it spreading out around. So usually you want to give at high altitude, you want to give 20, perhaps 25 miles separation between you and big CBs. You can get a little closer at low level, but eventually, of course, if there's storm clouds or a line of storm clouds between you and your destination, you're going to have to either divert or penetrate it if you can't go around it, if it stretches from like horizon to horizon, in which case you will reduce the speed of the aircraft down to what we call turbulence speed, the best penetration speed, but you'll give everyone on the cabin advance warning, strap everyone down, make sure the cabin is all secure, and then ride it out. And obviously you go usually in the gaps between the cores, the centers of storms. So this looked like it was either really bad clear air turbulence, which caught the crew out, or perhaps they didn't quite give the separation that they thought they needed from a CB, or they just perhaps weren't quite as alert as they should be.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Nick. I think if they were going to penetrate the line, that the crew would have notified the cabin crew to go ahead and button everything up. So I really honestly think this is probably clear air turbulence encounter. And they asked about whether the front heading to do with it. It very well could have, because you have rapidly rising and sinking air, and may not necessarily be directly associated inside the clouds as well. I mean, there's nothing that we have available to us that can actually look at vertical and ascending and descending air in the clear air. It's just not, we've got sensors on the ground that give you wind shear warnings. We get wind shear warnings, but that's only for thunderstorms that you can really see the rapid ascent and descent of the air, because it has liquid in it. We do have some airlines out there do have a new tool, and that is a flight viewer that will give us a turbulence area plots that gives us an idea. And we were using that today, gives us an idea where the turbulence is and how to avoid it and what altitude it tends to be at. So we can, in some cases, go ahead and utilize that data, but you can't predict everything. And this is, I think, a clear case of clear air turbulence.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with your education about storm systems, turbulence, avoiding it, perhaps your experience with flying in and around cumulonimbus / thunderstorm activity. I would say, we weren't there, we don't know all the details, but I would say that it should have been known by the crew that even getting close to some of these storms was going to perhaps have a risk of a turbulence encounter. And we don't really know. Maybe the captain did tell the cabin crew to go ahead and wrap everything up and get seated as quickly as they can, and perhaps that was miscommunicated, or they didn't understand the urgency of it, and perhaps they thought, well, we only have a few more rows and we can probably knock out the whole cabin and then sit down. I've seen that happen before, where they didn't really understand the gravity of what was trying to be communicated, and so perhaps better communication would have kept this from occurring to the cabin crew. In a case like this, when I know that we're getting close to something that is potentially hazardous to the cabin crew, I basically say, look, I really want you to stop, stow the carts, be seated, and not only that, would you please call me when everybody is seated with their seatbelts fastened. I'm talking about cabin crew. And that makes me feel better. So until I hear that call from the flight leader, the purser, or whatever, that everybody is seated and everybody's safe and sound, I don't really, it makes me uncomfortable, because I know that there's a risk of somebody being injured. Going back to his feedback regarding the sensors being damaged, of course, that was from the mouth of a gate agent, which, as we know, the gate agents don't always, have a really great grasp of things aviation related, as far as
I
the
thought you meant
aspect.
the sensors have been damaged by the mouth of the gate agent.
no, I'm sorry.
Phrasing is important.
But I'm thinking maybe that as far as, again, this might be some miscommunication, maybe because they experienced this severe turbulence and there are sensors on the Airbuses that once a certain acceleration is registered, then that calls for a certain a maintenance procedure for inspections and that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking that maybe, in voicing that to the gate agent, she took that as, oh, there are sensors that were damaged, instead of, our sensors say that we exceeded a certain acceleration and we can't fly the airplane until it's inspected or something like that. But again,
yeah, good point.
The only other thing I was thinking about, I'm fairly familiar with the Charlotte area and some of the weather patterns here, especially springtime, summertime. A lot of these thunderstorms can form rather quickly, especially in the afternoon. And I just, perhaps that was just a little bit of a part of it too, that something built a whole lot more quickly than they were expecting it to, even if there were thunderstorms in the area. But I think all the points were very well taken, that that's stuff you have to be aware of and have a lot of respect for. So,
well, you just mentioned something very interesting that I thought you were going to mention,
Mhm.
and that is just to the west of the Charlotte area, some mountains. So you could possibly have some, as you get down in elevation, you've got rapidly rising cooling air, and the mountains could have, I guess you don't want to call them mountains, but they're pretty
changes in elevation significant from the surrounding area.
So there's all types of, we come up with all types of scenarios. I was reading back to see if he had mentioned whether the seatbelt sign was on. He mentions that his seatbelt was fastened, but I don't see that the sign was on. So
no, he said specifically that he didn't think that the seatbelt light was on.
Yeah, so I think this is completely unexpected.
But again, I've flown with people that, I can see where our path is going to take us, and we're coming in perhaps on descent, and we see some cumulonimbus clouds, or I've seen other airplanes like ahead of me, that I'm thinking, well, I'm sure that they're going to deviate around that, and then I see them get really, really close or even fly through it, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to deviate around that, because I know that you don't have to necessarily be in that cumulonimbus cloud to experience some pretty significant turbulence. So again, that might be part of education or perhaps experience. I don't know. But I just know that there are times when I just say to the person perhaps I'm even flying with, and I can see it's clear to me that they're not going to deviate. And I'm going to say, we need to deviate. And, if it's not a significant deviation, I'll do my best to tell air traffic control we're going to do it, but don't fly into that cloud.
Right,
So you just got to be careful of these things, and know that you don't have to be near, or just near the cloud, and the flow of air going around these cumulonimbus clouds is like a water in a stream or a river going around large boulders. It can be perhaps even more turbulent than the flying right through the darn thing.
And the other thing we need to remember is going over the top. Sometimes you try and judge whether you're going to go close to the top of a CB or you're going to clear it. And when you get there, you don't have as much clearance as you expected, or the CB's growing so fast, particularly in the tropics. And I'm sure in the States, you have areas where CB's grow at an incredible rate. What you thought was going to be an easy miss, like 30 miles away, when you actually get there, you find the damn clouds bubbling up underneath you almost, and you need a good 5,000 feet vertically clear to get clear of any turbulence. So you can get a big problem if you try and skim the top of one of these things as well.
Yeah, and that was exactly the point I was trying to make. I mean, there's a good example from just the other day. I don't know if I actually posted it to Twitter or not. Maybe I will. The video of the hail with the thunderstorm that we had the other day, which wasn't terribly impressive hail, but about an hour before that, I looked at the weather. Checked the radar. There were some just kind of showers in the area, nothing that looked terrible. So I took the dog for a walk, and we walked for about 30 minutes or so. And I was about to head down another street away from my house, and I looked up and I said, no, that just doesn't look very good. And I pulled the radar back up on my phone, and out of nowhere, this enormous thunderstorm had built in 30 minutes. So, and then as soon as I got, it was perfect timing. I walked through the door and it started raining right then and there. And not 5 minutes later, hail, lightning, the whole shebang. So they can build very fast.
Yeah.
Well, that's typical of the South.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Southern half, from pretty much from all the way to the Rocky Mountains, throughout the entire central part of the United States, all the way to the East Coast. I mean, they build rapidly. So, but we're Monday morning quarterbacking this. We weren't really there, but based on our experience, and that's what I think the question really was: is based on our experience, what do we think? I think we've pretty much covered that. So,
at least Kevin got a free drink.
Yes,
all over his lap.
Well, I just have to say the Airbus, it's a weakling. So if it wasn't Mad Dog, then
well, we
been
made
no
it this
sensor
far.
broke. We would have not had any sensors breaking or
no, you just buckled and you wouldn't know about it.
Okay, let's compare. There's a big difference between a Volkswagen and a tank, and we drive the tank, or you go.
Okay.
So,
all right, time out.
Where's your big gun?
Okay, here we go. We're going to move on. Moving on, as Matt Smith says. Hey, this is a great time, I think, for this week's installment of that great segment of the show, perhaps the best.
Me speaking?
No. The old pilot's plain tales.
Darn it.
Yeah, there we go.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales, 100 years. On the 1st of April 2018, the Royal Air Force celebrates 100 years as the world's oldest independent air force. Yeah, it was also April Fool's Day, which I feel was very apt for the formation of the junior service. Whilst rank structure was modified from the navies, it was an army officer, the first commander of the Royal Flying Corps, who asked his men to come up with a motto for the new Air Force. Two of his junior officers were walking from the number 1 officers' mess at Farnborough to Cody's shed on Laffin Plain. As they walked, they discussed the problem of the motto, and Lieutenant J.S. Yule mentioned the phrase sic aetur ad astra from Virgil. He then expanded on this with the phrase per ardua ad astra, which he translated as through struggles to the stars. Colonel Sykes approved and forwarded it to the War Office, which then submitted it to the King, who approved its adoption. In fact, it seems that Yule may have read it in a book called The People of the Mist by Sir Henry Rider Haggard. In the first chapter was the passage, "To his right were 2 stately gates of iron fantastically wrought, supported by stone pillars, on whose summit stood griffins of black marble, embracing coats of arms and banners inscribed with the device per ardua ad astra." The official translation has always been through adversity to the stars. The heraldic emblem of the Royal Air Force is an eagle superimposed on a circlet, surmounted by a crown, and was based on a design created by a tailor at Geeves and Hawkes, the famous military tailors of No. 1 Savile Row. Of interest, Hawkes was previously employed by old Mel Meredith, who tailored the uniform that Admiral Lord Nelson was wearing when he was killed in action aboard HMS Victory during the Battle of Trafalgar. The location of the shop was chosen to be close to the Royal Geographical Society because they dressed so many Victorian explorers. The tailors gained many royal warrants, the first in 1809. Their customer list included such names as the Duke of Wellington, Michael Jackson, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush. All I could afford from them was my RAF service dress hat. The emblem created for the Royal Air Force was also adopted as the basis for the badges of the Australian, New Zealand, Canadian, Indian, Pakistan, and South African Air Forces. The first uniform of the RAF was described by Marshal of the Royal Air Force John Slessor as a nasty pale blue with a lot of gold over it, which brings irresistibly to mind a vision of the gentleman who stands outside the cinema. A year later, the Air Ministry replaced it with the blue-grey colour, which has remained in use to this day. A rumor of the time was that the cloth for the new uniform had been destined for Russian soldiers during the First World War, but sold cheap to the RAF when that market unexpectedly closed following the Russian Revolution. It was as the First World War concluded that Field Marshal Jan Smuts was tasked with studying the impact that air power had made on the conflict and present his findings to the Imperial War Cabinet. On his recommendation 100 years ago, the two British flying services, the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service, were combined. The newly formed military service became the most powerful air force in the world, with over 20,000 aircraft and 300,000 personnel, and came under the command of the man who is known as the father of the Royal Air Force, Sir Hugh Trenchard, the first Chief of the Air Staff. As the newspapers of the time commented, "In the employment of the planes, a limitless vista opens before the Air Minister. When General Maud has taken Baghdad, it was by aeroplanes raining fire on the Turkish army as it poured northwards up the Tigris bank that he completed the route that has put us in secure possession of the whole Baghdad vilayet. And in the present tremendous struggle, nothing is more significant than the accounts of the havoc played by our airmen amongst the dense German reinforcements converging on the front. It is clear that, given enough airplanes to pour a massive and continuous fire on the German routes to the battle line, we could have made the present offensive largely futile." The main task of this new force was to police the British Empire from the skies. Air power was much more cost-effective when compared with the cost of deploying ground units, particularly in the remote areas of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somaliland, where they put down a rebellion by the dervishes. Despite a growing role for the junior of the three services, following the armistice, defense cuts started to impact, and for 9 months the RAF had to wait and see if it would be retained at all. By the end of 1919, the service had been reduced to a strength of only 35,500 men. During the interwar period, the fledgling Air Force had to fight for survival. In order to win over the general public, it spent considerable efforts to keep itself in the eye of the British people. Events such as the Hendon Air Show became famous, and it was here, on the edge of London, that the air pageant revealed the latest fighters and displayed the talents of the RAF's best squadrons. The antics flown were designed to amaze and thrill, and mishaps weren't unusual, particularly when formation aerobatics were being performed with the aircraft tied together with bunting. Hundreds and thousands would come to gaze at the aerial spectacle, which usually concluded with an attack on a huge mock-up of a barracks or a ship or military vehicles, which were attacked and blown up, scattering debris everywhere.
Britain's giant airship, the R-101, is flying over the aerodrome now. Gives rather a fine idea of the evolutions that they're performing.
The catapult is operated by 2 compressed air engines, each less in size than an ordinary house dustbin.
Flight Officer V. Hugh Williams crashed in a tutor plane while giving a demonstration of what not to do. The plane was wrecked, but the pilot escaped injury. And something like 500,000 people are estimated to have seen it this year.
However, after the war to end all wars, the government was in no mood to spend more on armament. There was no serious threat on the horizon, and cuts were made. Even Winston Churchill, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, agreed that Britain would have 10 years to rearm should a threat appear. It wasn't until the early 1930s that a reassessment was made, and after the Italian action against Abyssinia and the German reoccupation of the Rhineland, the cabinet decided that it had to match the Luftwaffe with new equipment. However, when the invasion of Poland forced Britain into World War II, the situation was bleak. It wasn't just equipment that was in short supply, it was also men. It was the men of the Commonwealth who came to the defense of Britain, as well as many other countries, such as Poland. They did much to bolster the RAF, and barely in time. The Battle of Britain became a defining period of the RAF's existence. In perhaps the most prolonged and complicated air campaign in history, they held off the Luftwaffe. As the war progressed, it was the RAF who took the fight to Germany with its massive bombing campaign, including such noteworthy raids as Operation Millennium against Cologne, Chastise against the dams of the Ruhr Valley, Gomorrah against Hamburg and Berlin, and Carthage against the Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen, just to name a few. After the end of World War II, the RAF was drawn into the Arab-Israeli War. Due to the confused circumstances of the 1948 Middle East conflict, the RAF found itself fighting first the Egyptian Air Force, then the Jewish militias, and later the nascent Israeli Air Force. On the 22nd of May, the Egyptians attacked RAF Ramat David. 2 Royal Egyptian Air Force Spitfires strafed aircraft of No. 32 Squadron and No. 208 Squadron on the ground. Flying Officer Jeff Cooper and Roy Bowie took off in their Spitfire Mark 18s to mount a standing patrol. 3 Egyptian Spitfires launched a second attack, 2 of which were shot down by Cooper and Bowie. Flying Officers McElhaw and Hulley took over the standing patrol before the third wave of Egyptian Spitfires arrived. Flying Officer McElhaw shot both of these down. The air became somewhat chillier for the RAF as the Cold War started, and the first action was to help feed the people of Berlin during the airlift. This combined operation helped save both the people and the independence of Berlin against the Soviet blockade. By the end, the RAF had transported over 500,000 tons of supplies to the beleaguered German people. Although the United Kingdom did not base any RAF squadrons in Korea during the Korean War, 41 RAF officers were seconded to serve with the United States Air Force, and several RAF pilots saw action, mainly flying F-86 Sabres. They were credited with 7 kills. At least one pilot was killed when his F-84E Thunderjet was shot down by anti-aircraft fire on the 2nd of January 1952 as he attempted to strafe a column of trucks near Sunsan, a village north of Pyongyang. Other RAF pilots flew Meteors in the Royal Australian Air Force squadrons on ground support attacks. The 50s, 60s, and 70s saw the RAF committed to the defence of the United Kingdom and the support of NATO during the Cold War. A large percentage of Britain's nuclear deterrent was invested in the 3 V-bombers, the Valiant, the Victor, and the Vulcan. The UK developed its own nuclear weapons manufacturer, and even after the introduction of the Polaris submarines, nuclear-capable squadrons were maintained in West Germany. In other areas of conflict, the RAF saw action in the Malayan Emergency, the Mau Mau conflict in Kenya, the Suez Crisis, and the Konfrontasi against Indonesia. Harriers were also deployed to Belize to protect it from the territorial claims of Guatemala. However, with the decline of the British Empire, military commitments in the Far East were reduced, and eventually the RAF's Far East Air Force was disbanded in 1971. The 1980s saw the start of the Falklands War, with the need to deploy aircraft to recapture the islands from Argentinian forces who had invaded this distant British overseas territory. A mammoth effort, it involved the RAF flying alongside the Fleet Air Arm Sea Harriers in support of the task force that was sailing over 8,000 miles to recapture the islands. RAF pilots shot down 5 Argentinian aircraft. In addition, during the Black Buck raids, the aging Vulcan force, supported by Victor Edaway refueling tankers with Nimrods in support, flew the 4,000 miles between Ascension Island and the Falkland Islands, there and back again, to attack the main airfield at Stanley. To this day, the RAF maintains a fighter presence on the Falklands, now with Typhoons, but before that, the F-3 Tornado, and before that, F-4 Phantoms. In the 1990s, during the build-up to the Gulf War, RAF fighters were based all over the Middle East. Over 100 aircraft took part in almost every conceivable role. Fighters enforced no-fly zones. Reconnaissance aircraft, using state-of-the-art equipment, flew at night hunting scuds, and support aircraft flew record levels of hours. The RAF also operated over the Balkans during Operation Deny Flight. F-3 Tornadoes and AWACS aircraft policed the airspace, and the Kosovo War saw the RAF fight over Europe for the first time since the Second World War. Harrier GR-7s and Tornado ground attack aircraft operated over the former Yugoslavia, flying bombing missions. More recently, the RAF supported the invasion of Afghanistan with refueling tankers, support helicopters, Harriers, and GR-4 Tornadoes. In addition, the RAF flew Tornadoes, Typhoons, Nimrod, AWACS, VC-10s, and TriStars as part of the NATO intervention in Libya. When it formed, the RAF had over 300,000 men, but during its heyday, during the Second World War, that had risen to over 1 million servicemen. Currently, the Air Force can barely muster 30,000 regular servicemen. Although its operational fast jet force is the smallest it's ever been, it can still boast over 160 Eurofighter Typhoons and F-35 Lightning IIs. In addition, it has many other aircraft like E-3D Sentry AWACS, A400M Atlas transports, Airbus Voyager tankers, C-17A Globemasters, C-130J Hercules, plus a few RC-135 rivet joints and MQ-9 Reapers kicking around, not forgetting, of course, its large force of support helicopters and training aircraft. The RAF is still a fighting force to be reckoned with. I recently caught up with Sir Glenn Torpey, who was, only a few years ago, the Chief of the Air Staff. He was kind enough to give me his thoughts on the upcoming anniversary.
It's been a fascinating story. It really has. And if you look back to Trenchard's vision and the way he established the force, he could clearly see from very early on that air power was going to change the nature of conflict. And that's been proven over the 100 years. But probably didn't realize it at the stage. But some of the underpinning principles in which he established the Air Force, he realized that it was going to rely on technology. And he realized it was going to rely on highly skilled people to use that technology, either to operate it or to support it. So he established RAF Cranwell. He established the apprentice training scheme at RAF Halton. And that's been really the bedrock of the RAF from day one. He also recruited people from across society. And I think that's been a characteristic of the Air Force as well. So as I look at what we're going to be doing, what the current Air Force is going to be doing over the course of 2018, they have coined the phrase, they're going to commemorate, they're going to celebrate, but actually the most important bit, they're going to inspire future generations, both to be involved with air power in terms of military air power, but also the aerospace industry. So a huge amount of effort going into STEM activities. This is all focused on the youngsters, and I think that's absolutely right. But it's going to be 100 aircraft fly past over London. It's going to be a big parade in London to commemorate the world's first independent air force. And there's some fantastic stories out there. The individuals, the equipment. So I think it's going to be a great year.
With
Wow.
thanks to the Central Band of the Royal Air Force for the music
The RAF march past.
Caught you out there.
That's okay.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Brilliant. That's all right. Again, I'll fix it in post. The beauty of multi-track recording.
I love it.
It hides all kinds of errors. Wow, that was really, truly another awesome one. Captain Nick, you just keep on coming up with them.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm looking forward to this year. It's a chance for us ex-RAF blokes to really indulge ourselves. I mean, I'm sure other Air Forces will have their centenaries coming up, but we're the first.
Well,
Yay!
Yay! Okay, well, I think we should keep going here to try to knock out as many of these items in the feedback folder as we can. Although it's clear to me now, based on how long we've been going, there's no way we're going to be able to do it, but we're going to give it a go.
Talk faster.
Yes, we'll just talk faster. Okay. How about some audio feedback? And this is pretty good. Actually, it's not audio feedback. It's some feedback sent in that refers to a video. Dimitri sent in. He says, a new pilot celebrates his first landing. So he has a link here. I found another link to a slightly different version of this video on Facebook. But anyway, let's take a listen to the audio only. And you'll have to watch it to get a real full impact from it.
Everyone, I just want to say I landed my first aircraft today. Yes! That's up. Thank you. They thought I couldn't do it, but I did it. 70,000 altitude. I was up there. I called in the tower. They said I was hot. I'm peri sauce hot. I did. Can't stop me. Can't stop me. I did my first air. Got my first air. Got my first air. My first air. You like me. They can't do it like me. They can't do it like me. How long can you go? Can I hold to the low? I done it. Everybody, thank you, man. I did it. Oh, I'm so happy. My mom will be so proud of me right now. Thank you, mate. I did it. I did it.
So
was
you have to see the video.
Dana?
Yeah, it was.
I was gonna
Dana.
say that's how you guys celebrate when you land, right?
That was my first successful landing.
So this guy, to set it up again, you have to watch the video, but it's like some people coming off, they're deplaning from the jet bridge, and first this flight attendant is right ahead of this guy in a pilot's uniform, obviously not a real pilot, and
real pilots can't dance.
Yeah, true. That doesn't have that kind of rhythm. But you'll see in the videos when you watch them that the flight attendant that was in front of this guy with her roller bag, there was a camera mounted in it and like shooting upward. So that was one of the camera angles. And there was somebody else kind of been waiting in the gate area taking this video of this guy. And of course, a couple other clues that perhaps this was not a real thing. He said he was at 70,000 altitude.
Yeah, that's
70,000. Woohoo!
70,000 altitude. My mom is. I landed the plane and I didn't break it and didn't hurt anyone. Or language to that effect. I cleaned that up grammatically, actually. But
sounds like it came from the movie Soul Plane.
Yeah, and the other thing that we have to also acknowledge is I think he was wearing captain's stripes, and I'm not positive about that part of it, but this would not be the first time that he had landed in an airplane, even if he were a first officer flying for an airline. But anyway, it was very funny, very clever little spoof. And again, it was on a couple of different sites, and I'll put both of those in the show notes so you can watch it and really laugh, because I laughed out loud when I saw it. That was pretty funny. And just to see the looks on the people, almost like a flash mob. You remember the flash mobs they used to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All of a sudden people start looking around going, what is going on here?
God's green earth is happening.
It was kind of
here.
He was his own flash mob, basically. Flash with no mob. Anyway.
A one person.
Yeah,
flash.
a one person
I
flash.
can assure you, if I tried to dance like that, my pants would split.
That would make it even funnier, actually.
That really would be a flash.
Truly, yes.
Let's see
if
here.
you have a microscope.
Gus writes, hello, AVG crew and community. This is Gus from Argentina. I've been listening to the podcast for more than a year now. I also try to send very interesting feedback in the past, but I think I was a victim of the system glitch that made some of the feedback disappear.
That's what Jeff called it anyway.
Yeah. It's a glitch. If I get lucky enough this time, it will be my first aired feedback. Okay, so when you send in feedback like that, then there's probably a good shot that we're going to cover it. But you know what? Honestly, Gus, I don't remember any other feedback from you. I can go in there and look for it, but I do apologize if for some reason it didn't get to the feedback folder. Whatever. Let's see. Sometimes if you send it to the wrong address, it won't get to us. Not sure if you use the app or the website to send it, but anywho, regardless, I've been a private pilot for more than 15 years, just flying for fun, and decided to start working on my commercial license, hoping to have everything ready by the end of this year. The main reason I'm sending this feedback is to let the community know that I'll be traveling to Lakeland, Florida in a few weeks to attend the Sun and Fun Air Show that will take place between April 10th and April 15th. If any of you will be there, look for me in Slack and let me know. I'd love to meet some of you in person. That's all for now, but I'm sure I'll have more news to share with you in the near future. Happy flights. Gus from Argentina. And Gus, again, sorry we didn't get the feedback before, but I'm glad this one made it through. And I hope that people listening, if they're planning on heading over to Sun and Fun in Lakeland, Florida, I know that Dispatcher Mike went last year and covered much of it in his podcast. I'm not sure if he's planning on going again this year or not. So we'll have to see. But again, when you're there, Gus, make sure that you use your phone and record some audio for us, and we'll certainly try to get it played on the show. And that's about all I have to say.
I'm sure there will be community members there. I will not be there, sadly, but I have no doubt that there will be some folks there who would like to meet up. So,
yeah, I won't be there as well. I will not be there as well.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to make it this year. But anyway, I know we have lots of people in this community that probably will. So let us know.
I'm going. No,
yeah, there you go.
No, I'm not really.
Nick's going to fly his general aviation airplane over from one.
Or fueling stops later.
Yeah. Hey, moving on. Paul writes, Captain Nick. This is only addressed to Captain Nick. So listen, Captain Nick.
Oh, do I have to?
Yeah. I came across this video on YouTube and thought you, being a Phantom pilot, would bring back some fond memories for you. And he sends us a link from YouTube, and I took a little snippet of the audio from this at the very beginning.
The Phantom, one of Britain's most powerful sky weapons, worth £2 million. The pilot is Chris Kemp. To achieve command has taken him 3 years. It has meant endless study, intensive training, constant practice. He has gone through the toughest selection process to be found in any career. Whatever the aircraft, all flying calls for special ability and flair. But to handle a plane with the power of the Phantom demands much, much more. And that's what this film is all about.
All right, there you go.
Oh,
That's from 1973. Now, you were flying that in the 80s, right?
Yeah, I joined the Air Force in 74. My training took me it took 4.5 years to get operational, so I was on the squadron late 78. So this is so close to my training.
Yeah.
The only slight difference was when this guy, the training that they're showing there, the Phantom was still in the mixed role of air defense and ground attack. When I got to it, it was purely designated an air defense aircraft. So we didn't do any of the ground attack stuff that the Phantom was shown doing there. But other than that, that's almost identical to what I did. Even, I mean, that parade ground where that drill sergeant is drilling all these officer cadets is exactly the parade ground that I was marched around for so many hours. And where there's that, at the beginning of it, there's a big old lightning there, and it was actually one of the prototypes. It wasn't an operational lightning, it was one of the original prototypes, and that was the grass area just behind the parade ground. Around that lightning we planted tulip bulbs. Now our squadron was colored yellow squadron. We planted not tulip bulbs, they were daffodils and we planted rows and rows of these bulbs in a course number. I think it was 102 or something. And then we disappeared off. And like 4 months later, when spring sprung, number 102 leapt out of the grass.
That's awesome.
Out of this perfect lawn, which we thought was a neat trick. But yeah.
Well, I have to reflect the sentiments of Jennifer. Toughest selection process. Then how did Nick get in?
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
No selection process is 100% Jen. So I was just the lucky one that got through the crack.
Who did you pay off? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, well, I didn't have to, and I just when they weren't looking, I slipped in the back of the classroom.
Yeah, he must. He's supposed to be here apparently. All right. So again, link to the entire program documentary it's called RAF Phantom Pilot Training from circa 1973. Check it out. Orson writes in, he says, I'm just looking at QF9 departing on the first revenue nonstop flight from Perth, Western Australia to London, UK, with a scheduled flight time of around 17 hours and 30 minutes. That must be in excess of any existing FTL flight time limits, maybe flight time limits.
Flight time limitation.
So how do the Australian aviation authorities circumvent this? Well, it's called augmented cruise, right, Nick?
Yeah, so it's not actually in excess of flight time limitations because there is an absolute limit, but the normal limit for 2 pilots will be below that. However, you can augment your crew, add additional pilots, which means the pilots operating can go and rest. And by resting, they increase the flight time limit to the point where they can accomplish the flight. In fact, they can go, off the top of my head, up to like 21 hours, but I'm just going to go and check now to see if that's right or not. So give me a moment. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, it's something in the 20-hour range, 21, something like that.
Yeah, you guys are slightly different rules to us.
Yeah.
We're EASA, remember.
Okay, that's true. All right, well, while you look that up, Nick, we're going to keep pressing on and try to knock as many of these out as we can. Nick and Will wrote in, Nick Kidd from the Isle of Wight. I was listening to ABG 313, and the debate centered around why the pilot sits on the left. I believe it to be a continuation of the convention established by the American automotive industry to seat the driver on the left. But they were sitting on the left. Well, anyway, I think the left was selected as a result of the need to have the stronger and more dexterous arm available to operate the gears and brake lever, which required some significant effort at the time. Boarding on the port side of the aircraft probably was a result of the doors being originally located to allow access for the pilot. I don't know about that. Maybe.
I don't know about this either.
You know what? Actually, the answer is nobody knows. But continuing with Will's supposition, fellas, could it be that the captain / pilot in command sits in the left seat so they can maintain sight of the runway while flying the standard left-hand traffic pattern? This would have been a no-brainer when planes evolved from tandem to side-by-side seating. That's my thinking for the origin of the tradition. Here's hoping this helps with the quest for 51% accuracy. Yes, thank you, Will. We need all the help we can get. Any commentary? Anybody? I mean, I think we could talk about it until we're blue in the face.
Yeah, I think we could come up with a lot of guesses, and I think we could probably shoot holes in most of them. But why does any convention come to be? Sometimes it's not always based on a sound logical principle.
Right.
So
I would tend to dispel what Will has to say, because I think traffic patterns were around before, or I don't think it had anything to do with where you're sitting in the airplane.
Yeah, but I think that if you had a right-hand traffic pattern, non-standard pattern, then they'd probably switch seats, so the captain could be sitting on the right side. No, wait, that's not right. Never mind.
We can go around and around on this one.
Yeah. Let's quickly go on. Brian, you remember we talked about the news item a couple of episodes ago, I believe now, the tragic helicopter crash into the East River in New York City. And Brian sends us some audio feedback regarding that.
Hello, Airline Pilot Guide crew. This is Brian from Katy, Texas. Listening to your latest episode, and which are discussing the helicopter crash in New York. One thing I wanted to shed some light on. I've been in several helicopter rides going offshore into the Gulf of Mexico, and it is not a trivial exercise. We have a lot of training that we go through for water survival and exiting the helicopter. Even with these are normal harnesses where you can get to it from the front. So it's not, when you're in that panic situation of hitting the water, it is not it's not easy. And then you also mentioned the emergency flotation devices on the helicopter. Most of the time, they will keep the helicopter afloat, not necessarily upright. Main thing, at least in the Gulf, is they don't want the helicopter sinking to the bottom. You have a chance of getting out if you are, or when you get up, you're close to the surface, you can make it back to the surface. Chances of it actually landing on the skids and staying upright is fairly minimal. So they really, in my experience, they were told that they were not to keep it upright, but was to keep it close to the surface. And lastly, even when it does capsize, you become very disoriented in which way is which. In order to actually move, you really do need to keep, and this is what we're trained in, you need to keep you need to stay in your seat until the cabin fills with water before you attempt to move out. Otherwise, you will not be able to successfully navigate your way out of the helicopter. So obviously, these people did not have any of that training, plus the harnesses, so there's other issues going on. But even if they had the harnesses available where they could get them out, it would still have been a difficult situation for them, is my personal opinion. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for taking the time to call the Airline Pilot Guy feedback line, the Google Voice number we have set up, 304-997-4568, I think. I'm not sure. It's 99 Pilot. We haven't had anybody use that for a while. Most people use SpeakPipe or record something and attach it to their email. But
okay. I've got an answer, by the way.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Now, in the European rules, the maximum normal flight duty period is 14 hours. However, with in-flight rest, you can extend that to 18 hours by having 3 hours, 50 minutes in class 1 rest. Although, yeah, that's right. Although the 21 hours is permitted, but that's with commander's discretion on top. But you can certainly get, even in EASA rules, and I don't think Australians work to that. They have their own set of flight time limitations.
Yeah.
Even under EASA with flight rest, you can get above 17 hours, 30 minutes.
So it's very likely that they have rules similar that allow it as long as you have a relief crew and you have the proper rest.
Exactly right.
All right. Let's go back to Brian. He took the time to do that. He mentioned going through all the training, and then obviously the people that were on this photo shoot didn't have the extensive training that many do, as Brian has, and they had a different kind of harness that released from the front. And interestingly, the floaty things, what did I call them? The floaty skid things. Apparently, it makes a lot of sense. It really is not to keep the thing upright on the skids, although if you do it properly and get lucky, you'll stay that way. It's more to keep the helicopter from sinking, and that makes a lot of sense. But anyway, thanks, Brian, for that perspective regarding the helicopter stuff. And then it has come to my attention that I didn't mean to, number 5 in our feedback list. And this comes from Scott. And he says, I don't know if you guys remember hearing about this. Oh, yeah. In fact, we talked about it. But we're coming up on I guess we didn't come up. We've talked about it in previous episodes, but this happened long before podcasting was even somebody's idea. We're coming up on the 15th anniversary of this. Basically, what happened was that the mayor of Chicago at the time, Richard Daley, had a construction crew bulldoze large X's on the lone runway at night. The proper notice was not given to the FAA, so planes got left stranded at the airport since there was no way for them to take off. I've included a link to a news article from back when this happened and to the Wikipedia article about Meigs Field. So this was Meigs Field, which is right there on the waterfront, downtown Chicago, Illinois. And then he sent a link to the article. And Steph, I know that you have spent some time in Chicago, and perhaps you have something to say.
Yeah, I grew up in Chicago, and sorry, I feel like my internet is not great at the moment because I just opened something.
Nope, you're fine.
I'm okay. Okay, just making sure. No, I grew up in Chicago, and going downtown all the time, and being on the lakeshore there, and it was always just a part of Chicago, seeing aircraft, mostly small general aviation aircraft, taking off, landing right there on the waterfront, and it was really just an awesome part of the city. And yeah, he's absolutely, mentions exactly what happened. Basically, after September 11th, Mayor Daley had this idea that he did not want an airport basically operating so close to all the large skyscrapers that are right in downtown Chicago. He thought that was a safety security risk. And there was a lot of contention back and forth, and it basically ended with him bringing bulldozers to the airport in the middle of the night and basically tearing up the runway by gouging these big X's into the runway. Stranded quite a few aircraft there that had landed the day before. And, whether that was helpful for safety and security, probably largely debatable, because there was an operating Class D control tower at the airport at the time, which effectively made all of that airspace controlled airspace. And when he closed the airport, that went away, and that airspace does not fall within O'Hare's airspace, Midway's airspace, the other two large airports in the area. So went back to being basically uncontrolled airspace. So no one has to talk to anyone to fly up and down the lakefront there anymore, or the shore. So
you can almost argue that it's less secure and less safe.
Exactly. Now. And that was a lot of, the big arguments after the fact. But long story short, they did not reopen Meigs Field as an airport. It is now a park, and they hold concerts there. And it's very sad to me personally.
Well, it's sad for us who are aviation enthusiasts.
Yeah. What happened to the aircraft that couldn't get airborne?
They did all get out of there within the next few days by taking off on the parallel taxiway.
Oh, right. Oh, good Lord.
Actually, some other interesting things about, or at least things that are interesting to me, if you want to watch a really cool video, you can watch, for anyone who's been to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, there is a actual United Airlines 727 on display within the museum itself. That aircraft was landed at Meigs Field, and then it was actually taken on a barge across Lake Michigan and prepared for its display at the museum, and then barged back across and into the museum. But they landed it there, and there's video of it, and it's pretty impressive because the runway length at Meigs Field was not very long, like less than 4,000 feet. So
Wow.
I forget, maybe 3,500 off the top of my head. Maybe even shorter than that. I forget, but I like that video. It's maybe we'll find a link to it and put it in the show notes too, because I think it's interesting if you haven't seen it. But
okay, yes, if you find that stuff, send it to me, and we'll make sure it gets in the. Well, I'll attempt to.
And also, if you're in Chicago, go to the Museum of Science and Industry and check out that 727 because it's a pretty cool display. So
awesome. All right, quickly, number 12, Mark. Hi, longtime listener, first feedback. I live in Atlanta. Have met Jeff and Nick in a meet at PDK a couple of years ago. Always want to meet again, but work and life never let me. I was a pilot in Brazil before coming to the USA, as our lovely doctor knows, flying a GA plane in our checks. The flaps is always one of them, together with the flight control checks. Why are the flaps not checked in an airliner? Thanks a lot, and please keep up the good work. So I'm not really sure what he means that the flaps aren't. Do we have flaps? Yeah, we do have flaps.
We have flaps.
Do we ever check them? Well, yeah.
Well, you know, when you do, all right. So on a Cessna 172 and even the Piper Warrior, which I'm familiar with, both of those exclusively, have numerous hours in both of those. What you would do on your pre-flight walk around is you would go ahead and extend the flaps into the landing position. So you're checking the hinges in there. You're also checking the linkages that you control the position of the flaps. So I think that's what he may be in reference to.
I think that's what he means. Yeah, you actually extend the flaps and then go visually check and look at the flaps.
Check them and check. And there's basically a extension rod that is what puts the position of the flaps into the position. We do actually check the flaps. We just don't extend them into their landing position. Of course, unless you're on a Mad Dog, which has a tendency for the flaps and slats to droop, and you do get a really nice look at them, but you don't actually have to extend them to have a good idea whether they're going to work or not. So
because we have sensors, that are built in that give it, we have indications in our cockpit panel that shows us what the position of the flaps are, and if there's, if they're out of sync or whatever the correct term is, I can't think of right now, but asymmetric extension or whatever,
flaps extension, which you'll feel if it comes out the wrong way. But so I think that, Mark, that answers your question. We don't have to extend them to check the linkages like you do on the general aviation airplanes.
All right, enough said. Have some audio feedback. Let's see, how are we doing? We're about 2:48, about getting close to 3 hours. Let's listen to let's see. Thomas writes first. Hey there, APG crew. Just wanted to drop you a line regarding a double-barreled question I had recently. It was too long for SpeakPipe, so I will attach the file below. Hopefully it's not too long for our show today. I'm not sure. I didn't write down the time on it. Interested to hear your thoughts on the subject. I'm also attaching some of my photos for our very own professional photographer, Captain Nick. I thought I would include some F-18s as well as the Breitling jet team on their first ever North American team. They are the only team from outside the U.S. I've had the opportunity to photograph. Thanks for all your time and dedication to the great show. And again, this is Thomas Merriman, and I'm not sure, he doesn't say right there. Maybe he says in his feedback. So take it away, Thomas.
Hey, APG crew, this is Thomas. Another case of longtime listener, first-time caller, and total victim of APG syndrome. But I just wanted to write in, or I guess technically call in, for lack of a better term, to y'all, and pose a question to y'all. I apologize right off the bat for the kind of terrible audio quality, but I am currently in my truck and wanted to pose this question to you as I'm on this road trip, and my truck is actually the reason that I thought of this question in the first place. My truck has a lane departure system in it, wherein if I start to veer from one side of the lane to the other, and the truck thinks that I'm going to lose my lane, so to speak, that it will take over and actually correct the steering slightly to keep the vehicle in the lane. And the reason I know that this input is happening is because when the computer takes over, the wheels obviously move, but then the steering wheel moves to reflect this input. So even though I, as the driver, am not making the input, the steering wheel that I can visualize makes that movement. And this sounds kind of odd, but the reason I bring this up is because it got me thinking about the difference between, dare I say, the difference between Boeing and Airbus, and a question I wanted to pose about that. And hopefully no one's going to throw punches over this, but I was just curious to hear your thoughts and hear your discussions on the pros and the cons of both systems. And I do believe there certainly are positive and negative implications for both systems. But in the case of the Boeing, when I think of the Boeing, I think of personally the 737, the iconic, to me, trim wheel just spinning away as the autopilot trims out the aircraft. And that being a control surface or a control input device that, while not being controlled by the pilots, is still able to be visualized by the pilots as the autopilot controls it. And what I'm saying there is basically, do you think that it is advantageous for an aircraft to physically move the input devices in order for a pilot to be able to see the inputs and the movements that an autopilot is making on the control surfaces out on the wings? Meaning, if an aircraft is banking or if it is pitching, to see those movements reflected in the yoke rather than the autopilot just, in a fly-by-wire system, making adjustments to the surfaces on the outside of the aircraft without reflecting those on the actual input surfaces that the pilot has available to them. So obviously in Boeing aircraft, or really in any fly-by cable system, you would be able to see these movements, where in fly-by-wire, you're not going to visualize those movements, and at least to the best of my knowledge. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I do not have a great background on the Airbus side of things. I certainly don't know as much about the background of Airbus. I've learned a lot from Captain Nick, but unfortunately, I still have a lot to learn in that area. The other question kind of based off of that I would like to pose and hear y'all talk about is, in a former life and in just kind of my general personality, I am always a worst case scenario type of planner. And I've always been curious about the implications of a sympathetic stick versus a non-sympathetic stick. Meaning, if I'm flying in a Boeing aircraft, or if I'm flying in the Mad Dog and Captain Jeff were to pull back on the yoke, Captain Jeff pulls back on the yoke, and I know he's sitting in the seat opposite him. I know exactly how much pressure, back pressure, he is putting on the yoke, and I know where we are at on the full range of movement. If he's putting in partial pressure, full pressure, whatever the case may be. Whereas I'm not able to tell that by visualizing the stick on my side of the cockpit. If I were flying alongside Captain Nick in his Airbus, the stick, at least to the best of my understanding, is not sympathetic to the movements of the stick on the other seat. So I do not know the inputs being made by the other pilot. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be an issue in a normal flying situation. But again, like I said, I'm kind of a worst case scenario, plan for the worst, hope for the best. In an emergency situation, or in a situation where the aircraft is making unplanned, movements, and you're having to kind of counteract these things, would it not be more advantageous for you to be able to understand what your pilot flying is doing, so that you can check them on, their inputs, their reactions to what's happening, and also just to kind of, you're able to visually understand that subconsciously without having to divert all your attention to looking to see what inputs they're making on the stick. So if there's a yoke in front of me and it's moving, even if I am devoted to other tasks, I can understand if the other pilot, the pilot flying, is putting in, what control surface he is affecting, what inputs he's making. But with the Airbus, that's not going to be the case, at least to the best of my understanding, as the stick itself is not going to be showing me what movements are being made by the other pilot. But again, like I said, I don't know that this would ever be an issue. I don't know that this would ever be something of importance. But in the case of, something in an emergency where things are happening very quickly, and maybe you're not able to verbalize what's going on, but it might be advantageous to just kind of be that second set of eyes in the cockpit and be checking the inputs and the reactions of your other pilot. Would it not be better to be in a system where you can see those actions without having to devote your attention to that? And is there a system in place like that where you can see all of the inputs, specific to each control surface for the autopilot? Or is there a place where you can visualize the pressure and the different inflections that are being given on the stick of the opposite pilot? I certainly don't know the answer to those questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. Thanks again for a great show. And this is Thomas signing off for now.
Well, thank you, Thomas, for the audio feed. And first of all, one of the things you said, I think a lot of people make the improper, I'm not sure exactly, assumption or whatever, that fly-by-wire doesn't necessarily, I think a lot of people equate fly-by-wire with Airbus side stick controller. That is a non-active side stick controller. But Boeing makes airplanes, the 787, the 777, that are fly-by-wire systems, but they use conventional yokes, conventional controls, as far as the throttles, actually throttle levers, throttle whatever moving, and the control yokes moving, reflecting what is happening with the control surfaces. So you can't just say fly-by-wire and then mean a side stick controller that's not moving. So just wanted to make sure that I clarify that. But his point, Nick, I guess, about one of the inherent downsides of the non-active, or what do you say, non-sympathetic type of a side stick controller is the awareness, potentially the awareness of other crew members as far as what inputs are being made by the other pilot. And I think that, that has been addressed, and there are some companies out there and some airplanes now that are installing or making sure that they have that type of technology, an active side stick. I think there's another term for it that I can't recall, but that actually does give feedback to the pilot when they're applying forces on the stick, and it also is moving the opposite joystick. And so, I mean, the technology is there for that. I think BF Goodrich is one of the companies that is making that kind of a control stick, side stick controller. But I think they're very expensive, and I don't really think that anything that has been made by Airbus up to this point is they're not going to go back in and replace the non-active side stick controllers with active ones, because it would just be prohibitively expensive. Nick, what is your take?
Just turn my microphone on. Sorry, Jeff.
That's right.
Nick,
yes,
okay? I agree. Now,
You're still with us?
Yeah, I'm still just about. Thing is, we're in my outfit. We're not training guys very much. I'm certainly not. I don't feel the need to see what the other pilot on the flight deck's doing with his controls, because he's usually got several thousand hours. He's got a license. He can fly the airplane, and I trust him. And I can see what the airplane is doing, so I have a pretty damn good idea what he's doing with his controls. So I look out, see what the aircraft is doing, and if I'm ever in concern that he's not doing the right thing with the controls, I will take control, because the aircraft is obviously not going in the right direction. It's not behaving as I would expect it to at the time. So personally, I don't see that as a disadvantage at all. I think if I was in the training environment, I would prefer to have feedback on the flight controls, so that I can see how much flare, for example, the guy's putting in physically, whether he's pulling it back enough or not. But heaven's sake, we're an airliner. They're not hard to fly. I really don't see a problem. When you're in an emergency situation, if the captain is ever in doubt that the right thing isn't being done, he can always take control. After all, he's the senior pilot, the most experienced, and he's the one carrying the can anyway. So that would always be a situation the first officer would understand. If he was initially pilot flying, you had an emergency that was difficult to handle, I don't think many first officers would be particularly surprised if the captain said, I have control, and flew the airplane, regardless of how well it was being flown by the guy beside them. Just to correct one thing, the Airbuses do have a moving trim wheel, so you can see the trim wheel move, just like you might on a Boeing. And I did ask a Boeing colleague of mine, I don't know if you remember, Ian Black. I did interview him for Pain Tales a while back. He's on the 787. I said, quick question, Ian, with the autopilot engaged on the 78, does the big thing between your legs move? And he replied,
wow.
He replied,
a very blunt question, very, very personal.
Family show. Wow.
He replied, sadly, yes, not much in pitch, but seriously annoying when you're having a big turn. When you're doing a big turn and you're eating your dinner. And we had a bit of banter, and then I asked him what his general opinion was, and he says, this is a direct quote, I find everything about the 787 a pain in the ass. So not everyone is content with having that system. Some people prefer the convenience of having a much smaller set of controls for the aircraft to one side and not sticking up in the middle in a very old-fashioned way, and one that was really designed for an aircraft that had steel cables going up the full length of fuselage, rather than a computer flying hydraulic non-reversible controls. So the short answer is I don't care. The better answer is I don't care because I'm not training. If I was training, I think I would really like to have feedback on the stick. If ever I'm concerned on the line, I just press the red button and take control. And the only reason I press the red button is because otherwise you get lots of things squawking at you saying dual input, and because you don't necessarily get the effect out of the controls you want. Was there anything? Oh yeah, your photography. He's a lovely photographer, isn't he? He's got some great pictures. One I like the best is, I think it's a P3 Orion, and he's fisheye lens. The whole world is curved, beautiful sky, very dramatic picture. That is gorgeous. Love that. So great job on the photography.
Beautiful photography. And just add on what Nick was talking about, and of course the captain has priority as far as the control stick, as you were talking about the red button. The only aircraft that I've ever flown that has fly-by-wire is the RJ, which wasn't mentioned. The Canary RJ, I know the ERJ as well is fly-by-wire. The new CS, I'm sure, is fly-by-wire. All of these are, the ERJ and the CRJ both have control wheels in the front. And on the new CS, it's going to be a side stick. So I don't know about the CS as far as input and being able to feel, but I do remember distinctively that on the flight control page, you can see what the flight control positions are. In other words, if the ailerons are rolling, the elevator's pitching. I don't know if that's the same on the Airbus, Nick, but that would be a question I'd have to ask you on your flight control page. If you happen to have it displayed, would it show the ailerons and elevators and positions?
Absolutely, they do. They show exactly how much they've moved, where the limits are. And so when we do our flight control checks before takeoff, that page automatically comes up and we can see all the flight controls and spoilers deflect. We can see whether they're being moved to the correct position and how far they're being moved.
And you said the most important thing when the feedback was coming across, Jeff and I were sitting here talking, and I said, well, I really don't care what the position of the stick is, to be honest with you, because I'm not looking at the stick. I'm looking at my instruments and, of course, more importantly, the artificial horizon and my ND navigation display to see what, is the aircraft doing what I want it to do. I'm not looking at what the position of the control positions are. So just like what you were saying, Nick, if the aircraft's not doing what it should be doing, somebody ought to be making it do it,
fix it, make it happen.
So and then Jeff brought up, well, you get the Air France situation. Nobody the instrumentation wasn't giving you the proper indications. Well, we as a result, I don't know, I can't speak for other airlines. However, we have certain training protocols and memory action items now that if we were to lose our primary instruments, we can go to a certain pitch and power setting to give us certain parameters and airspeed and altitude that we are known factors. So,
and what's very important to say about that Air France 447 thing, and it's not stated enough, is the tens to hundreds of times that same exact type of situation had occurred in the past, but because the crew members were properly trained and knew something about the fundamentals of flying an airplane, they didn't get into that same position and kill hundreds of people.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of, with any accident, always we talk about the Swiss cheese models, and that was just everything lining up at the right time for a bad outcome on that day. But I think to get to the bottom of all of this is that there's some sort of inherent feeling now, especially after Air France 447, that if you don't have that feedback of what the other person is doing with their control inputs, then perhaps that's inherently unsafe somehow. And I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think there's any inherently unsafe feature of either design approach.
Now, perhaps in that particular situation, to overcome the incompetence of pilot flying, perhaps it would have helped.
Yeah, but I don't think it's inherent to the way the systems are designed. That was other factors contributing on top of it. But in the normal assumed situation where you have well-trained, competent crew and everything else working appropriately, where all of those Swiss cheese holes don't line up, it's perfectly fine. It's not inherently unsafe.
We can tie this into an early question about the discount or not so regulated the airlines are being afraid to fly on. I don't care, whether it's mainline or a non regulated. They're all regulated, but not a much smaller charter type carrier. This Air France, unfortunately, is a perfect example. You can buy the best airline in the world, and we're all subject to possibly making an error. And we all strive to fly the airplane as safely as possible. And whether you have side stick control, the yoke in front of you, feedback, no feedback, it really comes down to the training and the individual aptitude. And you only hope that you have the best people in the front of the aircraft, and also training the people and maintaining the aircraft. And I can say this, that untold millions and millions and millions of hours that aircraft are in the sky, year after year after year after year, and so few incidents happen every year, is a testament that we're all very professional, and for the most part, we do an excellent job with a very dangerous thing, flying an airplane. So that's just my answer to that.
All right. Well, I think we beat the dead horse.
Yeah.
All right. And then just quickly, one more piece of audio feedback before we end today's show. I think it's important that we play this, and then we'll top it off at the end.
Hello, APG community. It's Connie from California, leaving my first real feedback. You may have heard me a couple of times on recordings from meetups in the last year, most recently from Captain Nick's visit to San Francisco. As a follow-up to that episode, I just got back from Reno, where I attended the 29th Annual Women in Aviation International Conference, and let me tell you about the fun that I had. It was my first time attending the yearly conference. I had been to a regional one in Seattle, where we met up at the Museum of Flight and toured Boeing facilities, avionics companies, and the Alaska Airlines headquarters. The ladies there told me I just had to go to the big annual one, so when I saw that it was going to be just over in Reno, I figured I couldn't pass up the opportunity. So the organization is open to anyone in military, commercial, or general aviation, but also to enthusiasts like myself. It was a wonderful chance to meet people from around the world in all aspects of the field. I personally chatted with pilots and students from Germany, South Africa, and Pakistan, as well as plenty from the United States. The speakers were accomplished and inspiring. The featured guest was Janine Shepard, a former cross-country skier who overcame a life-threatening accident while training for the Olympics by getting her pilot's license and eventually becoming an aerobatics instructor. They had a series of educational sessions on various aviation-related topics. Awards and scholarships were given out, and the exhibit hall had over 150 booths representing different airlines, manufacturers, schools, clubs, and more. There are various chapters around the country and around the world, so if you are a woman in aviation or if you support their growing representation in the field, I would suggest going to wai.org and becoming a member. One of the reasons I chose to get involved was because I was shocked when I saw that women still only make up about 26% of air traffic controllers, 17% of dispatchers, 5% of airline pilots, and 2% of mechanics. In this day and age, how can the disparity still be so large? My question to the APG crew, especially our seasoned captains, Nick and Jeff, is how do you see your workplace climate in relation to women, and how has that changed or not changed over the years? I would also love to hear feedback from any female aviation professionals listening to the show with their perspective on the issue. It makes me happy when I hear a female captain over the PA on my flights, by the way. I always try to give a smile and thumbs up to you for representing. Again, I am currently just an enthusiastic fan of aviation, finding this passion only somewhat recently, though I may join these awesome ladies and take it to the next level at some point. I'll keep you posted. Thanks for a fun and informative show.
Well, thank you, Connie. It's great to hear feedback from you. I've met Connie a few times at various meetups out in Northern California, and that's awesome. Thanks for it. And I'm hoping that will be only the first time that we hear feedback from you. I'll start by saying, women in aviation, my personal feeling is they don't belong in aviation. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll leave now. Bye.
Get out of here. I've flown, and I've said this several times in the several years I've been doing the show. I have flown with male pilots and female pilots, obviously mostly male pilots because of the just the way everything has worked over the years. But it's the same. And again, the same thing with military versus civilian pilots. I fly with people that are mostly average, the old, bell curve. There are some that are maybe not quite so there, like Dana. And
like
then,
me.
yeah, I'm just kidding. No, that's not true. And then others that are maybe on the right side, the steep side of the bell curve that are above average, and some that are just awesome. And guess what? It doesn't matter. I mean, that same what's the word that I'm looking for? Presentation, or I know there's a word that I just can't.
I'm not sure where you're going with this yet.
Yeah, I know the way things are scattered about or distributed. Okay, distribution. That's it. The distribution of that is the same whether you compare all the women pilots in the aviation piloting career, all the military pilots, all the civilian pilots. In my opinion, this is my experience only. I'm not talking for Captain Nick or anybody else, but it's just like you can almost state that the percentage of the not so good, or I'm not even saying not so good, maybe below average, average, above average, is about the same regardless of the group. And so I've flown with some really awesome aviators that just happen to be female in the Air Force, and I've flown with them in the civilian world as well. And so to me, if you've made it, especially in the airlines, or even in the military, if you've made it through pilot training and you're a rated pilot, you're good. You've done what it takes to get to fly an airplane in the military. You have wings. That's no easy task. Same thing in the civilian world. If you have done everything you need to do, passed all the check rides, and gotten hired by a minor or major airline, you've done what it takes to be there and represent. And so for me, yeah, no difference. It just we just have different body parts. And I should also
eloquently put.
Yeah, thank you. Not really. And also I should add that recently I've noticed a huge difference in the last, I'd say, 5 years at Acme. I mean, it used to be a rarity when you'd walk into the pilot lounge in Atlanta and see a female pilot. I mean, we had a very low percentage. And now when I walk in, I know it's not quite 50-50, but there are a heck of a lot more female pilots in all the pilot lounges and walking around the airports and everything else. And listening to pilots communicating on the radios, a very much high. Now, again, it's not parity. It's not 50-50, but it is considerably more than it was when I started my career almost 30 years ago in the airlines. And I think that gap is continuing to close. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I think Nick might want to add or.
No, I agree 100% in almost every respect. We're an equal opportunities employer in Acme Red, and we have a good proportion of pilots from all backgrounds, all races, all religions, and both sexes. I was going to say
Yep.
all sexes, but really, I guess there's more than two-ish, but no, anyone who wants to be anything in their own life, that's fine. If you can fly an airplane, you can also join our airline.
There you go.
And just to add in a few things, if the sound of my neighbor cutting through something with a saw or I don't know what they're doing up there, it's exceptionally loud. I hope you can't hear it because
Freddie?
I don't know what they're doing.
Coming through the door?
No, Freddy Krueger.
Yeah. Sounds like they're using a circular saw. I have no idea what's going on. Anyway, first of all, Connie, I'm so jealous that you went to the Women in Aviation conference. I saw nothing but lots of amazing posts about it over the past week or so. I had quite a few friends that were there as well. And I definitely need to make it to that conference at some point because it just sounds like a really great time, great event, lots of networking opportunities and lots of good speakers. So definitely a little jealous of that. There was something else I was going to add to that too, and I'm so distracted by what's going on outside the window right now that it's.
There's a guy behind you with his chainsaw.
I think just adding on a little bit to what Jeff said, I think just with pilot shortage going on and the amount of hiring that's going on, especially at the regional level right now, I think that percentage of women who are airline pilots is going to be increasing rapidly because I know just from what I see on social media and from friends and contacts that there are a whole lot more women getting into aviation in this day and age than I think there were in the past. So I think that percentage is going to change significantly in the future. I don't know that it will ever be a 50-50 scenario, but I think for the most part, the women I know who are airline pilots, just coming from the other perspective of things, are very happy with the careers that they've chosen. I think that they're by and large treated equally and expected to perform their jobs on the same level as any other colleague of theirs, male or female. So, yeah.
That's right. Your sex or your gender does not give you any advantage or disadvantage. It should be the same opportunity that anybody has, regardless of gender.
The only thing I was going to say is, Jeff, if I had a female pilot, she probably smells a lot better than you do.
I'm sure of it.
But no, in all honesty, I mean, I agree with everybody on the panel. It's equal opportunity. If you're qualified to fly an airplane, it shouldn't be based on what equipment you have in the trunks. I mean, it's bottom line. Yeah, I don't want to see
family show.
It's good to see qualified people coming through. It doesn't matter to me, where they came from, whether they're, American, African, whatever you call, whether they're female, male, it doesn't matter to me. It's just want qualified people in the flight deck that I know that I can trust to do the job. And ultimately, that's all that really matters to me. Equal opportunity for everybody. That's what I want to see. And I think it's a fantastic career for anybody that wants to put forth the effort to become a pilot. And I got to tell you, though, with my name, a lot of guys have been disappointed through the years because they expect the blonde or
and not just because of your name,
and size 2 waist and whatever is going to show up, and then this big really hairy guy shows up. So, Dana. So yeah, it's I've gotten a lot of comments through the years, and I encourage anybody. As I said, it does not matter what gender you are or your race, whatever. I've encouraged several of my friends, and Jeff and I were actually talking about my buddy Tony, and the fact that I just talked about it being my buddy Tony, and he had no clue that he was an African American because I don't see gender and or
Tony
race.
doesn't know that he's an African American.
He does.
Oh, he does. Okay.
We could say a few jokes there, but we won't talk about Ron Jeremy. Anyways, yeah. So that's the way I view it. It's people Don't look at me like it's saying cuckoo, whatever.
Hey, Connie, I'll say this too. If you're,
your logic there, but okay, I'm sure.
I'll just leave this in closing a little bit for Connie. She mentioned maybe joining our ranks, and I would definitely encourage you to do that if you are thinking about it at all, because it sounds like you've definitely got the aviation bug, and there's nothing like actually getting out there and experiencing that ability to fly an aircraft for yourself. So,
and what I've said all along, we talked about it earlier. Do it. Don't live with regrets. If you have the bug, you have any inkling to do it, and you have the ability to do it, or have a way of getting or receiving the ability to do it, i.e. money, just go do it, because you don't want to go live and be in some nursing home and age of 85 years old saying, man, I really wish I did, because there's nothing worse than living with regrets.
Take a chance.
Go for it. And you, before we go, at the end of the show, you have to make sure you acknowledge somebody.
Oh yeah, well, I'm going to do that. Thank you very much.
I'm just reminding you.
Dad. All right. Let's see. Well, we need to go pretty soon. About 10 minutes before we're supposed to be over at Blatt's Beer and Table for the meetup. So let's do this. Let's say we're going to put a couple of the pieces of feedback in the folder from Simon and from Texas Charlie. They'll be moved over to the next show's feedback folder. And if you want to send us feedback, you can do that by heading over to the airlinepilotguy.com website, where you'll find ways to communicate with us, learn about the crew, the community, and so much more. Again, that's airlinepilotguy.com. We have apps for iPhone and Android, and we also have social media, and Steph can tell us about that.
social media, join us on Twitter. We're at APG Crew. We will all have access to that and interact with you there. Or if you like Facebook, facebook.com/airlinepilotguy. Lots of community members there sharing all kinds of different links and stories about aviation and just generally interacting and getting to know one another. So,
absolutely. And let us not forget about, what are we pointing out?
Hillel's just walking in.
Oh,
see Hillel walking through the door.
I think he's going to tell us about another quasi social media thing. You can join our Slack group, and Hillel, take it away. Tell us about that. I can't find where Hillel is in here.
He's coming through the door with an axe.
You lost him already?
Yeah.
Do you know who I am?
That's
lost. He's locked out. I hear him knocking.
Okay. Well, keep going. Ramping here. Yeah. Keep going. Well, let's try H on this one.
APG listeners,
here we
please
go.
join us on our Slack team. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and plain tales topics. We plan meetups and events. To get into the Slack team, please send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @HI11E1, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel @HI11E1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Hillel. Good seeing you again.
And also the thing I wanted to mention that I asked Dana to remind me of, and he did that so smoothly. We wanted to mention our producer, Liz. She does a lot of work during the week and behind the scenes. And again, just wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that, and we appreciate her. And it's really helped me taking a big load off of my shoulders. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. So thank you, Liz Piper, our producer at the APG. And
thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Hi, Liz. Thank you.
Until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Last time being here with Jeff. Want to know?
Great. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that.
Bye.
Dana is always the longest one.
That's very true.
Said the actress to the bishop.
Bam. Okay, recorders.
Yeah.
Kill
Off.
your recorder.
Off if you turned it on.
It was on.
Okay, here we go. Boom. All right, and boom. And save. Okay, excellent.
Oh my God, 3 hours, 48 minutes. You have to be.
Well,
Mine says 3:39.
But I have
And it was really like
3:34, but we take 10
3:20
minutes off that. So it's about 3:20 something. So yeah, it's probably the longest we've done. Although I think we did one that was 3.5.
Is that why there's a dinosaur in my butt called the Megasaurus?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. All
Okay.
right, let's get out of here.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the live hangout. And as I said, we're going to head over to Blatt's and we're going to sign off. See ya.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.